The thing about Star Wars, it's endless. Movies, shows, games, comics, you name it. There's so much out there that even after all these years, it still feels like we've only seen a small part of it. It never really stops growing, and honestly, that's why we love it. In this video, we're exploring the lore of Star Wars, the secrets and stuff we don't see in the movies. So grab a snack, sit back, and trust me, this is going to be such an experience. And if you enjoy slow journeys through strange history, feel free to subscribe, it helps a lot. Now, let's begin. You ever think about what the Force actually is? Like everyone in Star Wars keeps throwing that word around, may the Force be with you, but nobody stops to explain it. The truth is, the Force is the most mysterious thing in the galaxy, and half the time, even the Jedi don't know what they're dealing with. If you walked up to a Jedi and asked, "What's the Force?" they'd probably give you one of those calm smiles, quote some ancient text, and then leave you more confused than before. The Jedi say, the Force surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together, which sounds poetic, but also a bit vague, right? The Force has been around since the beginning, older than the Jedi, older than the Republic, older than civilization itself. It's woven into the DNA of the universe. Every planet, every creature, every random droid that accidentally kicks a pebble on Tatooine, everything creates ripples in it. It's a massive ocean. Every living thing is a drop. But together, it's all one sea. And when someone's strong with the Force, it basically means they know how to surf. What makes the Force interesting is how differently everyone experiences it. The Jedi treat it like a religion, the Sith treat it like a weapon, and regular people treat it like a rumor. If you asked a farmer on Naboo about it, they'd probably shrug and say, "Yeah, I've heard of it, but it's not like it helps me harvest crops faster." Yet, every time someone saves or ruins the galaxy, the Force is usually involved somewhere in the background, probably rolling its eyes. The movies keep it simple, light side, dark side. Good guys glow blue, bad guys shoot lightning. But in universe, it's much messier than that. The Jedi talk about something called the living Force. That's the energy flowing through every life form, the part that connects you to the moment. It's what Qui-Gon Jinn was obsessed with. Then there's the cosmic Force, the bigger picture. That's the Force's main server, where the energy of life returns when something dies. The living Force and cosmic Force keep feeding into each other, like a galactic recycling system, about those little things called midichlorians, the part of Star Wars that makes everyone roll their eyes. They're microscopic life forms living in your cells, and they're how living beings communicate with the Force. The more of them you have, the better your signal. People got mad at that explanation, because it made the Force sound too scientific. But honestly, it's fascinating. It means that even spirituality in Star Wars has biology behind it. It's like the universe decided, yeah, I'll let people use magic, but I'll also sneak in some science, so the nerds don't feel left out. The wild part is that the Force doesn't really have morals. It doesn't care if you're a Jedi, a Sith, or a Jawa with ambition. It's neutral, a reflection of whoever's using it. If you're angry, it feels like chaos. If you're calm, it feels peaceful. That's why the Jedi spend so much time meditating. The Sith see that differently. They think emotions are power. Anger, fear, passion, all that stuff fuels them. They're not interested in inner peace, they want results. And the Force responds to that too. It doesn't choose sides, it just flows through whoever's calling the shots. The result? Jedi make floating rocks, Sith make thunderstorms. Same Force, different mood swings. Now, there's this ancient belief that the Force actually thinks, that it has a will of its own. Some Jedi believe that every major event in history happens because the Force wants it to. The birth of Anakin Skywalker is the biggest example. He was supposedly created by the Force itself. Whether that's true or not, it says a lot about how people in that galaxy see the Force, as a living thing that can decide when to step in and shake the board. In Legends, the older Star Wars lore, that idea goes even deeper. There are theories that the Force created entire species to maintain its balance. There were ancient monks called the Dai Bendu, who believed the Force was the consciousness of the universe. They didn't worship it, they studied it like scientists studying weather patterns. Some even thought the Force could dream, and the galaxy was its dream. That's the kind of thing you start to believe after 2 drinks and a long night looking at the stars. And if we're talking weird Force theories, nothing beats the Mortis realm. That's from the Clone Wars, one of the strangest storylines in all of Star Wars. It's basically a pocket dimension where the Force takes physical form. You've got the father, balance, the son, dark side, and the daughter, light side. They control the flow of the Force in the galaxy, Mortis feels more like mythology than science fiction, but that's what makes it beautiful. The Force might not just be an energy field, it could be the galaxy's consciousness, splitting itself into archetypes so it can understand itself. And then, in the deep end of legends, you have entities like Abeloth, a being who tried to join the Mortis family, failed, and became something so powerful and corrupted that even gods feared her. She's chaos incarnate. That's the side of the Force that people rarely talk about, the part that's ancient, unpredictable, and a little terrifying. If you talk to a Night Sister from Dathomir, she'll tell you that the Force is magic. They use it through spells, rituals, and ancient ichor, tapping into the same energy but shaping it with culture. They never needed Jedi training or lightsabers. It's one of the coolest examples of how universal the Force really is. If you think about it, that diversity makes sense. The galaxy's enormous, billions of systems, trillions of species. The idea that they'd all interpret the Force in the same way would be absurd. It's like expecting every culture on Earth to agree on one religion. The Force adapts to the people, not the other way around. And what's crazy is that it might even adapt to eras. When the galaxy gets too peaceful, it stirs things up. When darkness takes over, it throws in a hero or two. Balance doesn't necessarily mean peace, it means correction. It's like the Force is constantly adjusting its thermostat. The galaxy gets too cold? Add some chaos. Too hot? Cool it down with hope. That's why the same patterns keep repeating. Empires rise, empires fall, the light wins, then the dark rises again. The Force is addicted to balance, and balance requires movement. Without struggle, it can't exist. It's kind of poetic when you think about it. Still, for most people living their lives, the Force probably feels like background noise. You meet someone by accident, change jobs, miss a flight, survive a battle. The Force is always there, moving pieces around in the background like a bored cat. You just don't notice until you look back and realize how neatly it all lined up. And that's the beauty of it. The Jedi, the Sith, the scholars, they all try to define it. It grows, it adapts, it jokes. Maybe the Force doesn't want to be solved. It just wants to be felt. Maybe that's why it keeps creating life, to experience itself through different eyes, again and again. So what is the Force really? It's everything. The galaxy's heartbeat, its conscience, and its biggest mystery. It's the universe's way of saying, I'm still here. And honestly, that's what makes Star Wars magical. The idea that something invisible ties everyone together, even across light years, even across time. The Force is connection, motion, and curiosity, all rolled into one endless story. And if the Force is listening right now, well, hopefully, it's in a good mood. You know what's funny? For all the talk about the Jedi and Sith, nobody really talks about the people who came before them. In both canon and legends, the story starts with a planet called Tython. It's a world practically built out of the Force. Even the weather reacts to emotion. If too many people lean to one side, say too much anger, too much peace, the entire planet would freak out. Storms, earthquakes, lightning that looks like it's alive. It was the galaxy's first mood ring. Tython was home to a bunch of early Force users called the Jedi Order, spelled with an extra apostrophe. These weren't Jedi yet. They didn't believe in light or dark. They talked about Ashla and Bogan, the two moons of Tython. Ashla represented serenity and creation. Bogan stood for passion and destruction, and the Jedi believed balance was everything. Lean too far to one moon, you lost yourself. Their training was wild. If a Jedi became too consumed by anger, they were sent to meditate under the light of Bogan's moon until they cooled down. Too passive? Too withdrawn? Off to Ashla's side to get your emotions back. These were the galaxy's first Force therapists, making sure nobody went full Sith or full monk before it was trendy. That philosophy, Ashla and Bogan, became the foundation of everything the Jedi and Sith would later fight over. The problem was, as civilizations grew, so did ego. People started taking sides. Some believed the Force should be used for order and peace, others thought it should be mastered, controlled. You can probably guess how that went, but we'll get to that story later. Back on Tython, they didn't worship it, they didn't even pray, they studied it like natural scientists. The Force was weather, energy, instinct, something you could learn from, not obey. And because of that mindset, Tython became this crossroads of knowledge. Force users from across the galaxy came there to train, debate, and sometimes accidentally destroy half a mountain in the process. Now, before Tython, there might have been others. In Legends, there's a species called the Zeffo. These guys are fascinating. Tall, ancient, half-engineers, half-mystics. They existed thousands of years before the Republic, long before the Jedi. They treated the Force, which they called life wind, like a cosmic tide. Some Zeffo dedicated their lives to studying it. Others used it for domination. Sound familiar? Their civilization rose high, built temples, studied artifacts, and then collapsed under the weight of their own arrogance. The dark side corrupted them, tearing their society apart. By the time anyone found their ruins, they were just a whisper in the Force. The Zeffo are an amazing reminder that the Jedi weren't first, not by a long shot. They were inheriting ideas from civilizations that had already burned themselves out playing with the same power. It's like humanity discovering fire and immediately lighting their kitchen on fire. Lesson learned, eventually. But the Zeffo weren't alone. The Force seems to have been whispering to beings all over the galaxy independently. The Qua from Legends are another early case. They were reptilian beings who used the Force to create these things called infinity gates, basically portals that could teleport people across star systems. Sounds great until you realize someone always uses that for war. The Qua tried to shut their network down when they saw how destructive it became. Most of them died defending that choice. The Force gave them knowledge, and they learned the hard way that knowledge without restraint can destroy you. Then there were the Celestials, mysterious, godlike beings who might have predated everyone. Canon mentions them through the Mortis family and in ancient records. In Legends, they were called the architects. They supposedly built the more black holes, aligned star systems, maybe even designed the galaxy's shape. They didn't use the Force, they were the Force, or at least something close to it. If that's true, then everyone else, Jedi, Sith, Zeffo, Qua, were basically kids playing in their sandbox. Back on the smaller, more relatable scale, the Dai Bendu monks that I mentioned before. They're one of the oldest documented Force cults, and here's a fun fact. Their symbol later became the Jedi Order's logo. These monks didn't have laser swords or fancy powers. They meditated, wrote texts, and believed the Force was the universe's heartbeat. If the Force was the wind, they were the first to learn how to listen. The Jedi later borrowed a lot of their philosophy, though they'd probably never admit it out loud. All these early groups had one thing in common: curiosity. They weren't trying to conquer the galaxy, they were trying to understand why it feels alive. And maybe that's why their stories still echo. The Force rewards curiosity. The moment people start thinking they've mastered it, that's when it turns around and humbles them. Now, in canon, the earliest named individual connected to the Force is the Prime Jedi. He's the one depicted in that giant mosaic on Archto, the planet where Luke Skywalker later goes hermit mode. The mosaic shows a figure balancing light and dark, palms open, calm expression, surrounded by the Jedi symbol. It's a portrait of someone who understood balance before anyone else complicated it. The Prime Jedi's teachings set the tone for what the Order was supposed to be. Not an army or a police force, but explorers and philosophers, learning from the Force instead of controlling it. And somewhere along the way, the message got lost. But back then, it was simple. Harmony with the galaxy, not dominance over it. If you think about it, these early Force users must have lived lives that were part science, part spirituality, part wild guessing. No one could tell them if they were right. They didn't have holocrons or council meetings. Every discovery was personal. Imagine realizing you could move objects with your mind, but not knowing if you were blessed or cursed. They probably spent half their lives wondering if they were chosen or just losing it. And you know what's really weird? The Force might have wanted it that way. Instead of giving all its secrets to one species or one group, it sprinkled them across the galaxy. Every civilization got a piece of the puzzle. The Zeffo built machines powered by it. The Qua learned how to travel through it. The Dai Bendu meditated on it. The Jedi tried to balance it. The Jedi later turned it into doctrine. And the Sith, well, they turned it into a weapon. The Force spreads itself thin on purpose, maybe to make sure nobody ever owns it completely. In a way, they were scientists of the unseen. They didn't separate magic from physics, because to them, it was all one thing. In Legends, there's even mention of a Force-sensitive species called the Rakatan, who we'll talk about later. They were the first to weaponize the Force on a galactic scale. You've already drawn lines in something that was supposed to be whole. The early Force users didn't draw lines. They painted with the whole canvas. And even if their civilizations are long gone, the echo of their discoveries shaped everything that came after. The Jedi, the Sith, even random smugglers quoting, "May the Force be with you." They're all repeating an idea, first whispered on some ancient world. Maybe that's what makes those early days so fascinating. Just beings discovering that they were connected to everything and trying to make sense of it over a lifetime. The Force wasn't a religion yet, it was wonder, and that's probably the best way to describe those first beings who touched it. Curious, terrified, and amazed all at once. They didn't have the answers, but thanks to them, everyone after got to ask better questions. So, we talked about those first beings who ever felt the Force. Well, here's the wild part. What if the playground they were standing on, the galaxy itself, was already designed long before they even showed up? And at this point, let's go deeper into Celestial's part. You might remember their name popping up earlier, those godlike architects that even the oldest records barely whisper about. They weren't your average ancient species. They were more like cosmic engineers who looked at the galaxy and said, yeah, this place could use some organization. The Celestials, according to both ancient texts and legend stories, shaped the galaxy. Literally. Whole star systems, gravitational patterns, even clusters of black holes might have been their projects. If you think that sounds too big to be believable, join the club. The Jedi archives barely mention them, and most scholars think they're myth. But every now and then, something in the galaxy feels a little too precise to be coincidence. Take the Maw, for example, that swirling cluster of black holes near Kessel. In legends, the Maw was something the Celestials built, supposedly to contain something ancient, or maybe as part of a massive energy mechanism. No one knows for sure. Either way, if it's true, that means these beings could manipulate gravity on a galactic scale. That's not divine power. That's engineering that makes the Death Star look like a student project. And here's where the dots start connecting. Remember when we talked about the Mortis family back? The father, the son, and the daughter. Balance, dark and light. Some stories say they were Celestials, or at least descendants of them. The timelines fit, their power fits. The fact that they live in a dimension completely outside normal space definitely fits. So maybe Mortis wasn't only a weird Force anomaly. Maybe it was one of the Celestials' leftover experiments, a pocket reality they built to study balance itself. If that's true, then the Force isn't only the galaxy's soul, it's also their art project. The Celestials might have been the ones who gave it form, or at least tried to. Imagine creating an entire universe as a Force laboratory. You'd think it sounds insane, but the more you look at Star Wars history, the more it starts to make uncomfortable sense. In legends, they're said to have built the Corellian system too, that whole group of planets that somehow orbit perfectly around a single star. All 5 worlds aligned like they were placed there by hand. And maybe they were. The theory says the Celestials used something called Center Point Station, this ancient space structure that could move planets through hyperspace like marbles. It's still there, still working, and nobody knows how. Even the Republic couldn't build anything remotely close to it. Some researchers in universe think the Celestials built that station to maintain order, to keep planetary systems stable across the galaxy. Others think it was a prison. A few fringe theories claim it was part of a much larger machine, something built to regulate the balance of the Force. And honestly, after everything we've seen, that last one doesn't sound too far-fetched. And just like with the Force itself, nobody agrees on why they did any of this. Maybe they wanted control, maybe they were trying to protect something, or maybe they just wanted to create harmony, a galaxy that flowed like a perfect song, every star a note, every world a chord. The idea that the galaxy is music, structured and yet alive, fits everything we've seen about the Force so far. The Celestials are gone, completely. Nothing left but ruins and theories. There's a theory that their creations, their servant species, turned against them. The Rakatan was said to have once been under celestial rule. Then they revolted, using Force-powered technology to overthrow their masters. That rebellion, if it really happened, might have been the first war in galactic history. The Celestials vanished, the Rakatan rose, and the cycle of power, the one that never ends, began. And honestly, it fits the Force's pattern perfectly. Every time someone gets too powerful, something resets the board. It's the same rhythm we've already seen, just on a much older scale. Even in modern times, the Empire tried to figure them out. In Legends, Palpatine actually sent entire expeditions into the unknown regions hunting for celestial artifacts. That's how obsessed he was. The guy who spent decades studying immortality, and the dark side still looked at their work and went, "Yeah, that's beyond me." That alone tells you how big their legacy was. The more you read about them, the more it feels like they were less of a species and more of a transition point between gods and mortals. They might have even become part of the Force. Some think the Celestials merged with it, their consciousness scattered across reality. Maybe that's what we're actually feeling when people say the Force has a will. Maybe that will is them. Now let's talk about the galaxy itself. The whole structure, the space between space, the literal ground rules of reality in Star Wars. Let's start with the big one, the core. Think of the galaxy not as a flat disk, but like a layered city built over millennia. Every city has a downtown, a financial district, the oldest, most powerful part. In the Star Wars galaxy, that's the deep core. It's this incredibly dense, packed region of ancient stars, supermassive black holes, and gravitational whirlpools that make it a nightmare to navigate. It's the old neighborhood, the bedrock everything else is built on. This isn't a peaceful place. It's volatile. Stars are born and die here in violent cycles. It's the galactic engine room, powerful, loud, and dangerous. And right in the heart of this chaos, you have planets like Coruscant. Think about Coruscant for a second. A planet that's one single giant city, built over itself for thousands of years. The sheer weight of that place, the layers upon layers of history, literally stacked on top of each other. It's the ultimate imperial capital because, symbolically and physically, it's the center of everything. It's built on the most stable, ancient real estate in the entire galaxy. It's no accident that it became the seat of power. It's like building your castle on the biggest, most solid mountain you can find. From there, the galaxy expands out in these big, concentric rings. The core worlds are your affluent, established suburbs. Alderaan, Corellia, Chandrila, planets with long histories, rich resources, and lots of political influence. They were the first to be colonized after the deep core was settled, and they've had time to get comfortable. Then you get to the colonies, the inner rim, the expansion region. Each one is like a successive wave of development. Think of it like the expansion of a country. First you have the original 13 colonies, then you push westward, then you hit the frontier. With each ring, you get a little less polish, a little more independence, a little more of a make it up as you go along attitude, the further out you go. Then you hit the mid-rim. This is where things start to get a little rougher. Less direct control from the central government on Coruscant, more local systems ruling themselves. The resources might be a little thinner, the planets a little less paradisiacal. This is the solid, working-class part of the galaxy, and beyond that, the outer rim. This is the Wild West, the frontier. Tatooine, Mandalore, Lothal. This is where the rule of law is more of a suggestion, and you make your own luck. It's the place where stories happen, because it's untamed. It's also where a lot of the galaxy's resources come from, which creates this weird dynamic. The core worlds consume the resources extracted from the outer rim, often exploiting the people who live there to do it. It's a classic core-periphery relationship, just on a galactic scale. The outer rim is massive too. It represents a huge portion of the galaxy's physical territory, but a tiny fraction of its political power. It's the backyard the folks in the penthouse apartment forget exists, but it doesn't stop there. Beyond the outer rim, you have the unknown regions. It's a vast, largely uncharted territory, shrouded in gravitational chaos, strange stellar phenomena, and cosmic mazes. It's not just that no one has mapped it, it's that it's actively difficult and dangerous to map. Hyperspace routes are unstable or non-existent. Stars can wink out of existence. It's a mess. This is where Thrawn's people, the Chiss, built their empire, along with all sorts of other secrets Palpatine was so obsessed with. He knew there was power and knowledge out there that the mainstream galaxy couldn't even comprehend. And then, wrapping around the entire known galaxy like a mysterious, impenetrable barrier, you have the Galactic Barrier. It's a massive, energy-filled field that messes with hyperspace travel, and, according to some legends, even with the Force itself. It's described as a ripple in the fabric of space-time. Trying to fly through it can drive pilots insane, scramble ship systems, or just tear a vessel apart. It's the ultimate "Here be dragons" sign on the map. It literally defines the limits of the known world. So the birth of the galaxy, as we know it, might not have been a random birth at all. It might have been a deliberate construction project. The Celestials might have been the urban planners of the cosmos, designing the galactic downtown and its major suburbs. But a galaxy is more than a map. It's about how you travel across it, and that brings us to the single greatest mystery and the most important invention in this universe: hyperspace. Hyperspace isn't that you're going really fast. That's just subluminal speed. Hyperspace is a parallel dimension that exists alongside our own, a realm where the laws of physics are different. Normal space is the ocean. You can sail across it, but it takes forever. Hyperspace is a network of deep ocean currents, or better yet, a series of subway tunnels running underneath that ocean. It's a shorter, faster path because the distance between 2 points in hyperspace is much smaller than in real space. But how does it work? You need two things: a hyperdrive and a nav computer. The hyperdrive is the key. It doesn't make the ship go fast. It literally punches a tiny, temporary hole in reality and shoves your ship into this other dimension. The universe next door is full of, well, we don't really know, but we know that mass in our universe casts a shadow in hyperspace. A star, a planet, a black hole. Their immense gravity creates a kind of shadow, or mass shadow, that exists in both dimensions. Fly through a star's shadow and you're atomized, instantly. It's not a bumpy ride, it's the end of the ride. There's no almost in hyperspace. You're either safe or you're a cloud of particles. That's why you need hyperspace lanes. They are pre-mapped, meticulously calculated, safe routes, where the coast is clear, where the gravitational shadows of stars, black holes, and nebula have been carefully charted over thousands of years. The Corellian Run, the Perlemian Trade Route, the Hydian Way, these are the interstellar highways. They are the lifeblood of the galaxy. Commerce, communication, war, it all flows along these routes, and the discovery of these routes is one of the most heroic and terrifying stories in galactic history. They were discovered by brave and probably half-crazy explorers in the early days, flying ships that were little more than hyperdrives with a cockpit attached. They flew on instinct, on luck, and a lot of them just vanished, smeared across the cosmos. They were called pathfinders. Imagine the guts that took, jumping into the absolute unknown, not knowing if the next second you'd be inside a star. This is where one of the coolest, most underappreciated bits of lore comes in. Before nav computers were advanced enough to calculate these routes in milliseconds, who charted these paths? Force-sensitive beings. The earliest travelers used the Force to sense these safe paths. They could feel the gravitational currents and the safe passages intuitively. The Jedi of the ancient days acted as navigators on great exploration vessels. It was a symbiotic relationship between technology and the Force. The ship provided the power, the Jedi provided the direction. They were living nav computers, trusting their feelings to guide them through an invisible labyrinth. And this leads to one of my favourite pieces of technology, the hyperspace compass. It was an ancient artifact used by the Jedi and other Force-using groups that didn't rely on star maps or databases. It literally used the Force to point the way to the nearest safe route or a specific destination. It was intuition made into a machine. It's a perfect example of how, in the ancient galaxy, science and the mystical weren't separate things. They were two sides of the same coin. You didn't need to understand the math of gravity if you could feel its flow. The mysteries of hyperspace don't stop there. Why are some routes so much faster than others? A ship travelling the Hydian Way might make a journey in half the time it would take on a less established route, even if the real space distance is similar. It's all about catching the right current. And then there are the truly weird phenomena, like interdictor cruisers. These are warships equipped with generators that can project artificial gravity wells. They don't create real planets, but they create a gravity shadow massive enough to fool a hyperspace drive. A ship travelling along a lane would suddenly hit this wall in hyperspace and be wrenched back into normal space, right into an ambush. It's the equivalent of suddenly throwing a brick wall across a freeway. Alright, grab a drink and get comfortable, because we're about to dive into one of the darkest, most fascinating chapters in the entire Star Wars timeline. We're talking about the guys who basically invented the concept of a galactic empire, and they did it with a level of brutality and technology that would make even Palpatine raise an eyebrow. I'm talking about the Rakatan Infinite Empire. Now, to understand how crazy the Rakatans were, you have to set your mental calendar way, way back. We're talking about 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. The Galactic Republic is just a twinkle in some philosophers' eye. The Jedi, as we know them, don't exist yet. The galaxy is a vast, dark, and mostly disconnected place, filled with isolated worlds doing their own thing, completely unaware of each other. And into this void, the Rakatans arrive like a thunderclap. First, who were they? The Rakatans were a species from the world of Lihon, though you might know it better as the Unknown Regions planet, where the Starforge was hidden. Physically, they were distinctive. Think of a humanoid frog-lizard hybrid, with sharp teeth, sharp claws, and a serious attitude problem. But their biology wasn't their main feature. They were, to their core, a violently force-sensitive species. And I don't mean like the Jedi who seek enlightenment, or the Sith who crave power through study. I mean the Force was a tool, a weapon, and a drug, all rolled into one for them. They called it the Force, but their connection to it was fundamentally different from anything we see later. It was primal, it was tied directly to the dark side, and it was inextricably linked to their own innate cruelty and their belief in their own racial superiority. They called themselves the Builders, and they saw every other species in the galaxy as tools or cattle. Their ability to use the Force was directly linked to their capacity for violence and domination. The more they subjugated, the more powerful they felt. It was a feedback loop of tyranny, but this came with a catch, a sort of cosmic irony built into their very DNA. Their connection to the Force was so corrupted by the dark side that it became biologically dependent. They could only use their powers on beings they considered inferior. If they were alone, or only among their own kind, their Force sensitivity would literally fade. They were psychic predators, and they needed prey to feel strong. They fed off the fear and suffering of others to fuel their own abilities. That one fact tells you everything you need to know about their entire civilization. They were addicted to evil. It was a biological necessity. So how did this nasty bunch of bullies become a galaxy-spanning empire? 2 words: Starforge. Forget the Death Star for a minute. The Starforge was a different kind of nightmare. It wasn't a weapon designed to destroy planets. It was a weapon designed to conquer a galaxy, and it was far more insidious. It was an ancient space station built with technology so advanced it might as well have been magic, that functioned as a massive automated factory. But it didn't mine asteroids or process metal in a conventional way. The Starforge was a dark side artifact, an ancient superweapon that literally converted solar energy and raw matter from a star into anything. Ships, droids, weapons, armor. It drew on the dark side of the Force to fuel a perpetual, endless production line. The more dark side energy it was fed, the more it produced. It was a self-sustaining engine of war, and it ran on hatred, aggression, and suffering. Imagine that, an enemy that never runs out of ships, an enemy whose fleet can rebuild itself faster than you can destroy it. That was the power the Rakatans wielded. The Starforge didn't just build their navy, it was their navy, their army, their entire industrial complex. It allowed a single species from one world to project power across the entire known galaxy, overwhelming primitive cultures with sheer, inexhaustible numbers. And project power they did. Their infinite empire wasn't built on diplomacy or trade, it was built on the twin pillars of slavery and terror. They would descend on a world, use their Force-powered might to overwhelm the native population, using Force lightning and telekinetic brutality that must have seemed like the wrath of gods, and enslave everyone. They didn't just want resources, they wanted servants, soldiers, and living batteries for their dark side-powered technology. They built massive mysterious temples and orbital stations, all powered by the backbreaking labor of millions of slaves from 1,000 different worlds. Their architecture was meant to intimidate, vast and pyramidal, often built over sites of strong Force energy, which they would then corrupt and twist to their own purposes. Their technology itself was a reflection of their dark side connection. This is a crucial point. They didn't use Navi computers like everyone else. Their starships were powered by Force-driven engines. A Rakatan ship would have a central chamber where Force-sensitive Rakatans, often called Force Hounds, would channel their power, and that collective dark side energy would literally catapult the ship through hyperspace. They didn't need calculated routes. They used the Force to feel their way to worlds strong with life, worlds they could then conquer and consume. This is why their empire was such a bizarre patchwork. They didn't connect every star. They specifically targeted lush, life-bearing planets, leaving dead rocks and mineral-rich worlds completely untouched. Their map of the galaxy was a map of life, which for them was a map of food and slaves. This is also why core worlds like Coruscant, Alderaan, and Corellia were among their first targets. They were teeming with life, shining like beacons in the Force. They left their mark everywhere, and their legacy is a series of planetary scars. If you've ever wondered about the ancient history of planets like Tatooine, Kashyyyk, or Dantooine, the Rakatans were there. They're the reason Tatooine is a desert. It wasn't always. It was a green oceanic world, a paradise. The Rakatans set up massive orbital strip mining operations and groundside refineries, sucking the planet dry. They ravaged its ecosystem so completely that they boiled its oceans away and scoured its surface until nothing was left but sand and bones. They turned a paradise into a wasteland and just moved on, leaving the nascent human population to struggle in the dust. On Kashyyyk, they enslaved the primitive Wookiees, but it went beyond just slavery. There are legends, passed down in Wookiee oral history, that the Rakatans actually genetically manipulated them. They supposedly engineered into the Wookiees a deep-seated, instinctual fear of the open ocean and space travel, a terror-born instinct, to prevent them from ever building boats or ships and rising up to escape their world. They biologically terraformed a species to be permanent prisoners on their own planet. On Dantooine, they built one of their massive temple prisons, a place of such suffering that the dark side echo lingered for millennia, long after the Jedi Enclave was built on the same site. A ghost the Jedi could never fully purge, but the thing about building your entire civilization on a foundation of slavery, sadism, and the dark side, it's not a stable foundation. They orchestrated their own collapse. It was an inside job, fueled by their own poisoned nature. The very thing that made them strong contained the seeds of their destruction. Two things happened at once, a 1-2 punch of cosmic karma. First, a terrible plague, known as the Second Genocide, or the Rakatan Plague, swept through the Rakatan species. It was a scourge that specifically targeted their connection to the Force. It was a Force disease, a cancer of the spirit that severed their connection, like a nerve being cut. Imagine a species of telepaths and telekinetics suddenly going deaf, dumb, and blind in their own minds. The psychological shock and disorientation alone would have been catastrophic. Their entire society, their sense of self, was built on this power. To lose it was to lose everything. The second thing was a direct, inevitable result of the first. With their Force sensitivity gone, their entire technological infrastructure collapsed overnight. Remember, their ships didn't have buttons and levers. They were flown by Force wills. Their weapons were activated by rage. Their communication systems worked through shared dark side intent. Suddenly, no one could pilot them, no one could power them. The Infinite Empire, a network connecting hundreds of worlds, just went silent. The lights went out across the galaxy. They were stranded on their slave worlds, cut off from each other. Their godlike powers vanished, sitting in the midst of populations they had tortured for generations. And what do you think happened next? The slaves, the billions of beings they had oppressed for centuries, saw their masters suddenly rendered powerless. The gods had become mortals, and very, very vulnerable ones. The uprising was universal, and it was merciless. On world after world, the Rakatans were overthrown, hunted, and wiped out. Their grand empire shattered into 1,000 pieces overnight, leaving behind isolated, broken pockets of their species, stranded on worlds full of creatures who hated them. The Rakatans on their homeworld of Lehon devolved into a primitive, tribal society, their glorious history fading into myth and legend, their language simplifying, their culture forgetting the stars. The Starforge drifted, forgotten, near their sun, a silent monument to their hubris, waiting to be rediscovered millennia later by Darth Revan. The slaves they left behind on various worlds, those populations eventually became the seeds of future civilizations. This is perhaps their most profound, unintended legacy. The humans they abandoned on Corellia, Alderaan, and other core worlds, now free and possessing the advanced technology left behind by their former masters, would, millennia later, become the founders of the Galactic Republic, the very government that would stand for everything the Infinite Empire was not. That's the ultimate, profound irony of the Rakatan Infinite Empire. In their quest for ultimate control, they accidentally seeded the galaxy with the very beings who would one day unite it against the very kind of tyranny they represented. They were the original sin of the galaxy, a warning written in blood and fire across the stars, a warning that no matter how powerful you become, if you build your throne on the suffering of others, if your power is dependent on the subjugation of other living things, then the ground beneath it is not just unstable, it's a ticking time bomb. The Rakatans weren't conquered by an enemy, they were consumed by the dark side they thought they controlled. They are the classic tragic tale of the monster that in the end always eats itself. Alright, let's talk about the big one. The divorce, the cosmic philosophical breakup that echoes for 100,000 years. We're talking about the Great Schism. This is the moment the Force, as a concept, was ripped in two by the people trying to understand it. It's the story of how a simple difference of opinion among friends turned into a holy war that would define the galaxy forever. It's the origin of us versus them. To understand the schism, you have to first wipe your mind clean of everything you know about the Jedi and the Sith. We've talked about the Titan, but let's get a clearer picture. A bunch of philosophers, scientists, artists, and weird hermits, all gathered on the planet Titan, united by one thing: they could feel the Force. They were trying to understand it, the way early humans tried to understand fire. It was a time of incredible, wild experimentation and discovery. They weren't Jedi yet, they were just people trying to map the universe's greatest mystery. They called this period the dawn of the Force. It was a golden age of inquiry. They saw the Force as a single, unified energy field. It had different aspects, sure, like an ocean has calm bays, gentle currents, and violent storms, but it was all one ocean. Their goal was to understand its flow, to connect with it, to learn from it without demanding anything from it. They built the first temples, not as churches but as laboratories. These were places of immense natural power, like the Jedi Temple on Coruscant would later be built on a Force nexus. They were observatories for the soul. But the thing about people, we can't leave well enough alone. The big central question was, how do we interact with this thing? And this is where the first hairline crack appears in their unity. It wasn't a malicious crack, it was an intellectual one. On one side, you had a group who believed in passive observation and harmony. They thought the Force had its own will, a natural flow, a cosmic purpose. Their job was to understand that flow and align themselves with it, to become a clear conduit for its energy. To them, using the Force to impose your will on the galaxy was like trying to push a river. It was arrogant, it was disruptive, it created chaos. They believed true strength came from stillness, from listening. They called this path Ashla. As I mentioned before, in the Force part, this, as you can probably guess, is the pure, uncodified ancestor of the light side. On the other side, you had another group. These were the more hands-on experimenters, the engineers of the spirit. They weren't satisfied with just watching the river flow. They wanted to build dams and canals, to irrigate crops and power cities. They saw the Force as a raw, neutral power to be harnessed for the betterment of themselves and their society. They believed that emotion, passion, strength, conviction, even righteous anger, was the key to unlocking a deeper, more potent connection. They argued that denying your emotions was denying a fundamental part of yourself, and therefore a fundamental part of the Force. To ignore emotion was to use only half the tool, and that was bogan. It was about power, action, and tangible results. For a long, long time, this was just a philosophical debate, a bunch of nerds arguing in stone libraries on Titan. The Ashla followers would meditate under the Jedith trees. The Bogan followers would conduct intense emotional rituals in the deep valleys. They disagreed, sometimes fiercely, but they were still part of the same community. They were colleagues who shared meals and called each other friends. They probably saw their approaches as complementary, two different methods of studying the same phenomenon. So what turned a college debate into a galaxy-shaping war? It always comes down to a few people who take the ideas too far, who cross the line from theory into dangerous practice. The Bogan practitioners started to push the boundaries of what was considered acceptable experimentation. They began focusing on what they called forcing, not just feeling the Force, but forcing it to do their bidding, to reshape reality to their desire. This led to the discovery of what we now call Sith alchemy, twisting life forms, creating monsters like the terrible Terrantitex, beasts bred to hunt Force sensitives, and manipulating the physical world in unnatural, permanent ways. They started drawing power from stronger, more volatile emotions, not only passion, but fear, hatred, and a hunger for dominance. The pursuit of results began to overshadow the pursuit of understanding. The Ashla followers watched this evolution with growing horror. To them, this wasn't a different school of thought anymore. It was a perversion. It was like watching your friend, who used to be a brilliant chef, start performing butcher shop experiments on live animals. The methods of the Bogan were becoming visibly destructive, toxic, and cruel. Where Ashla sought to build up, Bogan seemed only to consume and twist. The tension built for years, a pot slowly coming to a boil. Then it finally blew. The historical records are fuzzy on the exact spark. Was it a forbidden experiment that went horribly wrong? An argument over a specific artifact that turned into a force-fueled brawl? The most common and compelling legend points to a single, catastrophic event known as the Force Crisis. A rogue Bogan master, in an attempt to tap into the planet's core wellspring of power, created a wound in the Force on Tython itself. This act was like stabbing the ocean. It unleashed a feedback wave of pure chaotic energy that shattered landscapes, drove lesser Force sensitives insane, and threatened to tear the planet apart. That was the point of no return. The Ashla faction saw this as proof positive that the Bogan path led only to ruin. It was no longer a debate, it was an existential threat. They declared the Bogan practitioners heretics and exiles. They demanded they abandon their practices immediately and forever. The Bogan followers, feeling persecuted and believing the Ashla were cowardly bureaucrats trying to limit their potential and police the truth, refused. They saw the Ashla not as wise, but as fearful. Words turned to threats, threats turned to violence. The first battle on Tython was a brutal civil war between former friends. It was fought with primitive, unstable lightsabers, the ones that required external power packs on their belts, sputtering with raw energy, and with raw, untamed Force power. It was messy, personal, and devastating. It wasn't armies clashing. It was individuals who knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, now trying to kill each other over an idea. The violence was intimate, and that made it all the more bitter. The Bogan followers, who were now formally calling themselves the Legions of Leto, were ultimately defeated. They were driven off Tython, cast out into the vast, unknown galaxy. But this wasn't a clean victory. It was a trauma that scarred the soul of every survivor. The peaceful seekers of Tython had become warriors. To protect their philosophy, they had to nearly destroy their home. They had to use the very power they sought to understand in the most direct and violent way possible. The victorious Ashla faction was terrified. They had seen what unchecked power and emotion could do. They had witnessed the near destruction of their world. So, in response to that terror, they began to codify their beliefs into an unbreakable law. They stopped being philosophers and started being priests. They created rules, lots of rules. The simple, elegant idea of aligning with the flow hardened into a strict, dogmatic code of conduct. The Jedi Code, with its famous opening line, "There is no emotion, there is peace," wasn't born from wisdom in that moment. It was born from fear. It was a direct, visceral response to the perceived failures of the Bogan. It was a law designed to build a wall inside a person's heart to prevent anyone, ever again, from feeling the passions that led to the Force Crisis. They demonized the Bogan, now formally renaming it the Dark Side. It was no longer a different aspect of the Force. It was a corruption of it, a cancer, an abomination that had to be purged. They organized themselves into a formal, structured order, the Jedi Order. Their mission shifted fundamentally from understanding the Force to guarding it, and by extension, the galaxy, from the darkness they had unleashed. The Seeker became the soldier, the laboratory became the fortress. And what about the exiles, the defeated legions of Leto? Their story is just as transformative. They drifted through the galaxy for generations, bitter, full of rage, and nursing their grievance like a sacred flame. Their belief in emotional power was now fueled by a very real, very personal hatred for their former comrades. They became defined by what they were against. Alright, let's settle this. The ultimate bar fight of the cosmos. Who's the toughest guy in the Star Wars galaxy? I'm not just talking about who's got the fanciest lightsaber or the biggest fleet. We're talking raw, unadulterated power. The kind that can reshape stars, snuff out life, or hold the fabric of reality together. We're going to break down the heavy hitters, from the mortal coil to the divine, and try to figure out who truly sits at the top of the food chain. But we have to be smart about it. Power isn't a single stat like in a video game. It's a spectrum. Is the guy who can win a duel more powerful than the woman who can see 1,000 years into the future? Is the being who can destroy a star more powerful than the one who secretly nurtured the life that orbits it? First, let's set some ground rules. We've got to consider different kinds of power. Raw force potential. This is the brute strength metric. How much energy can they channel? Can they crush a Star Destroyer with a thought? This is the most straightforward, but also the most simplistic. Knowledge and skill. This is the finesse metric. A being might not have the biggest force muscle, but their technique is so refined they can achieve things a brute never could. This includes ancient Sith sorcery, Jedi mental disciplines, or understanding the deeper mysteries of the universe. Influence and will, the power to shape events, cultures, and history. This is political, social, and psychological power. Cosmic scale and nature. This is where we leave mortality behind. Is the being a person, or are they a personification of a universal concept? Are they a player on the board, or are they a part of the board itself? With that in mind, let's put them in tiers. It's the only way to make sense of it. Tier 3, the mortal powerhouses. These are the beings you know from the Hollows. They're unbelievably powerful, but they're still playing by the rules of physics and biology, more or less. Their power, while immense, is contained within a single mortal lifespan and is directed toward personal or political goals. Let's start with the obvious one. Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine. In terms of a pure dark side practitioner, he's arguably the peak of what a human, or near-human, can achieve through study, ambition, and ruthlessness. We're not just talking about shooting lightning from his hands, though he could do that better than anyone. We're talking about power on a galactic scale. He could veil an entire planet like Dagobah in the dark side, making it a refuge for dark side creatures and blinding even Yoda to certain events. He could create force storms, tornadoes of dark side energy in the fabric of hyperspace that could tear entire fleets to shreds across light years. His mastery of Sith sorcery allowed him to create unnatural abominations, transfer his essence to clone bodies, and cloud the vision of every Jedi in the galaxy simultaneously. But his power had a ceiling. It was tied to his physical form, his intricate schemes, and his connection to the dark side, which was a hungry, insatiable master. It was power that always demanded more fuel, more suffering, more control. Then you have Yoda. For over 800 years, he was the gold standard for Jedi mastery. His power, it was in profound, unshakable control. His connection to the living force was so deep, he could perceive the flow of destiny, sense shifts in the galaxy's balance, and commune with the cosmic force itself after death. He could absorb and deflect force lightning with his bare hands, lift an X-wing from a swamp with serene focus, and move at a speed that defied his ancient appearance. But Yoda's power was also defined by its self-imposed limitations. His unwavering commitment to the light side meant he would never tap into the raw, destructive, world-breaking potential that Sidious wielded. His was the power of a mighty oak tree, deeply rooted, resilient, life-giving, but not one to start a fire. And we can't forget Darth Vader. In his prime, Anakin Skywalker was a force of nature. His potential, stated by George Lucas and in countless sources, was literally off the charts. It was said to be twice that of Palpatine's. He was the chosen one, conceived by the Force itself. But after Mustafar, that potential was brutally capped. The cybernetic suit was a prison, limiting his connection to the Force, slowing his legendary agility and constantly feeding him pain and anger. Yet even as Vader, he was a terrifyingly powerful duelist and telekinetic. He could crush Durasteel with a gesture, choke a man across a star system, and his mere presence on a battlefield could decide the outcome. But the tragedy of Vader is that he was a shadow of what he was supposed to be, a god in chains, his infinite potential funneled into being the galaxy's most terrifying enforcer. This tier also includes legends like Darth Revan, a tactical and philosophical genius who mastered both light and dark, not as a conflicted soul, but as a unified weapon. And Luke Skywalker at his peak in the old expanded universe, who became so powerful he was basically a myth, capable of psychic projections across the galaxy, creating black holes with his mind and facing down threats that would make a Sith Lord tremble. These are the epic heroes and villains, the ones whose stories are told for millennia, but they still live, love, fight and die. But let's not stop there. Darth Plagueis deserves his place, the shadowy genius who discovered how to manipulate life and death. His studies bordered on godhood. He could influence midi-chlorians to create or preserve life, possibly even creating Anakin himself. His downfall wasn't a lack of power, it was his failure to see betrayal right next to him. Then there's Darth Bane, the Reformer, the man who forged the rule of two out of chaos, ending centuries of infighting. His power was physical and ideological, brute strength fused with intellectual ruthlessness. He realized that power spread too thin was weakness, and he funneled it into a singular evolutionary line. One master, one apprentice. The Sith that followed all traced their lineage to him. And Exar Kun, a name whispered in both fear and admiration. Once a brilliant Jedi, he turned to the dark side, seeking knowledge, and found damnation instead. Kun became something inhuman, sustained by dark rituals, his spirit surviving death itself for thousands of years, influencing generations. His combination of charisma, intellect, and sheer destructive capability made him one of the most dangerous Sith in history. Mace Windu also belongs here, a Jedi who could channel his opponent's darkness into strength. His Varpad fighting style literally danced on the razor's edge between light and dark. He defeated Palpatine in single combat, even if only briefly, proving that mastery of self could match raw power. Windu's strength came from clarity and conviction, not rage or ambition. And then there's Starkiller, also known as Galen Marek. The Force Unleashed showed us what happens when raw potential is trained without restraint. He could rip Star Destroyers out of orbit and shatter armies with a scream. His connection to the Force was emotional, chaotic, but unmatched in scale. In a universe full of disciplined warriors, he was the storm. And of course, Vitiate, also known as Valkorion, the man who turned immortality into a pastime. He devoured entire planets, literally drained their life energy to feed himself. He ruled for over a millennium, possessing new bodies when old ones decayed. His mind existed across thousands of consciousnesses. If Sidious was the spider, Vitiate was the web. He didn't conquer the galaxy once. He did it twice, under two different names. No mortal Sith ever came closer to godhood. They define the limits of mortal power. Beyond this point, we leave the realm of people and step into myth. Tier 2. The cosmic entities and Force wounds. Now we're leaving traditional mortality behind. These beings are either manifestations of the Force itself, or their actions have so warped their nature that they've become something else entirely. Cosmic phenomena with a will. First up, the Ones, the father, the son, and the daughter from Mortis. These three aren't just powerful Force users. They are living embodiments of aspects of the Force. The son is the pure, predatory, passionate dark side. The daughter is the compassionate, life-giving light side. The father is the conscious will that maintains the balance between them. Their power was so vast that the entire planetoid of Mortis was their domain, a place where reality bent to their will. Time flowed differently, landscapes changed with their moods, and they could manipulate matter and energy on a fundamental level. Anakin Skywalker, at his full potential as the Chosen One, was the only being powerful enough to potentially replace the father, which tells you the scale of power we're dealing with. Their power was absolute within their domain, but they were also trapped by their own natures, eternal players in a perpetual cosmic stalemate. They were less individuals and more sentient, arguing organs of the universe. Then you have Abeloth, the Chaos Mother, the bringer of chaos. If the Ones are the balanced, if tense aspects of the Force, Abeloth is the cosmic temper tantrum, the universe's immune system gone horribly wrong. She was once a mortal woman, perhaps the Father's servant, who in a desperate bid for immortality and to stay with her family, committed the ultimate taboos. She drank from the font of power and bathed in the pool of knowledge on Mortis. This act transformed her into a monstrous, immortal entity of chaos, hunger, and madness. She was a force of pure disruption that even the Ones feared and ultimately imprisoned. Her power was terrifyingly tangible. She could possess thousands of people across the galaxy simultaneously, create avatars of herself, and her mere presence drove entire planetary populations insane. She wasn't just a user of the dark side, she was a cancer within the Force itself, a sentient void that consumed order and life. Defeating her required the combined might of the entire Jedi Order and the Sith working together, an event so rare it's almost unimaginable. But we also have to include a different kind of entity here, the Force wounds. Beings like Darth Nihilus. Nihilus wasn't a god in the way the Ones were. He was a catastrophic accident. The mass shadow generator used at the Battle of Malachor created such a concentration of death and suffering that it tore a wound in the Force itself. And Nihilus was a victim who became the personification of that wound. He was less a man and more a walking, talking black hole in the Force. His power was an endless, insatiable hunger that forced him to devour the life force of entire planets. In a one-on-one confrontation, his unique nature made him almost unbeatable, as he could simply drain any Force-sensitive being he encountered. But his power was also his prison. He was a slave to his hunger, unable to interact with the world in any way other than consumption. He was a natural disaster with a mask, powerful in a specific, horrifying way, but lacking the consciousness and control of the Ones or Abeloth. In this same realm stands Darth Traya, Nihilus' teacher, a philosopher who viewed the Force not as divine, but as manipulative. Her goal wasn't conquest, but rebellion against destiny itself. She could sever beings' connections to the Force entirely, and her understanding of its nature bordered on enlightenment. If the Force were a game, Traya was the one trying to flip the board. And then there's the Bendu, the one in the middle, neither light nor dark, neither order nor chaos, simply the balance. He existed outside all ideology, an ancient, towering entity that could summon storms, vanish into the mist, and speak to Jedi and Sith alike. His power wasn't measured in combat. It was presence, awareness, and control of nature itself. He was the living embodiment of neutrality, the Force without bias, and even stranger, the Bedlam spirits, immortal tricksters from the dawn of time, who could manipulate matter, time, and even reality itself like clay. They made worlds vanish, bent dimensions for amusement, and treated mortals like toys. If the Ones represented cosmic order, the Bedlam spirits were unfiltered chaos, the universe laughing at its own creation, and above them all float the Force priestesses, ancient ethereal beings who guided Qui-Gon Jinn to immortality. They represented the merging of the living and cosmic Force, consciousness without flesh. Through them, Jedi learned to transcend death and become one with eternity. Tier 1, the architects and the authors. Now we're getting into the real deep lore. These are the beings who didn't just use the rules of the universe, they wrote them. They are so far beyond the concerns of mortals and even the cosmic entities that they are barely comprehensible. The Celestials, also known as the architects. I already mentioned that a few times. These are the beings who might have literally built the galaxy as we know it. They were the urban planners of the cosmos, shaping the very stage, the physical laws, and the infrastructure upon which everyone else performs. They are the reason the galaxy has a core and a rim in the first place. After they vanished, they left behind artifacts that continued to shape history for eons. And then at the very, very top of the pyramid, existing in a tier of their own, we have the wills. What are the wills? Good question. The answer is we don't really know, and that's what makes them the most powerful. The wills come from George Lucas's most fundamental original conception of the Star Wars saga. In his earliest notes, the entire story is presented as a translation from the Journal of the Wills. So who or what are they? The best understanding we have is that they are microscopic, intelligent beings that live within the Force itself. They are the ultimate mystery, the silent observers, the record keepers, but they are likely much more than that. If the Force is the energy field created by all living things, the wills might be the fundamental consciousness behind that field. They don't just observe, They may control the universe. Think of them not as characters within the story, but as the authors. They are the ones who are, in a very literal meta sense, writing the story of Star Wars. Every prophecy, every twist of fate, the rise of the Chosen One, the fall of empires, it's all part of their narrative. They exist beyond life and death, beyond the light and dark side dichotomy, beyond time and space itself. If the Force is the music, the Wills are the composers. If the Force is a story, the Wills are the writers. If the Force is a computer simulation, the Wills are the programmers. So, let's answer the question, who is the most powerful? If we're talking about a straight-up fight, a being you could point at and say, destroy that Star Destroyer, then Abeloth, or an unbound son from Mortis, would probably wipe the floor with anyone in the mortal tier. Their power is immediate, personal, and reality-altering. If we're talking about influence over the long arc of history, the Celestials win, because they built the civilization and the pathways that made that history possible. If we're talking about pure domination and longevity, Vitiate stands high above any mortal Sith. He became a god through patience, not passion. If we're talking balance and divine will, the Father embodies it. But if we're talking about true, ultimate power, the power to define existence, to write the laws of physics, to dictate the flow of history, to decide the very nature of life, death, and the Force itself, then there is no contest. The most powerful beings in the Star Wars galaxy are the Wills. And if you want to take it one step further, beyond even the Wills, there's one name left, the being who dreamed all of this into existence, the creator of the galaxy, the author behind the authors. His name? George Lucas. In the grand metacosmos of Star Wars, he's the real Prime Jedi, the first storyteller, the one who looked at a blank page and said, "Let there be lightsabers." So maybe the most powerful being in this entire saga isn't in the story at all. He's the guy who wrote it. You know the Sith, right? Dark Lords, red lightsabers, a lot of talk about passion and chains and ultimate power. It's a familiar image. The Sith weren't always a religious order. They were a species, a people with their own world, their own culture, and their own understanding of the power that surrounded them. There was a species of red-skinned humanoids living on a harsh desert world at the edge of known space, a world called Korriban, and they were the Sith. Picture Korriban. It's not a nice place. It's a world of blood-red sands, jagged, wind-carved mountains that look like broken teeth, and a sky that seems permanently stained a deep, ominous orange. The air is dry and cold, and the entire planet feels ancient, heavy with a grim history. It's a world steeped in the dark side, a place where the Force doesn't just flow, it broods. It's a pressure cooker of negative energy. And the native Sith species evolved in this crucible. They were a tall, robust people with distinctive crimson skin, heavy brow ridges, and facial tendrils that gave them a fearsome, majestic appearance. They were a proud, intensely tribal people, and they were naturally, innately strong in the Force. But their connection wasn't a philosophy or a discipline, not like the Jedi would later develop. For the Sith species, the Force was like the weather, a raw, primal, and omnipresent fact of life. It was something to be weathered, harnessed, and feared. They didn't use the Force so much as they channeled its violent currents. They practiced what outsiders would later label Sith magic or Sith alchemy. This was a practical, brutal art form. They would twist the creatures of their world to their will, creating monstrous war beasts like the terrifying Leviathans. They built massive pyramidal tombs for their fallen rulers, structures designed not just as monuments, but as focal points to concentrate dark side energy and allow their chieftains to speak from beyond the grave. Their society was built on a simple, brutal, and unquestioned principle. The strong rule, the weak serve. The Sith measured power in cunning, in domination, in one's ability to impose their will upon chaos. Even their language reflected this worldview, guttural, commanding, filled with harsh consonants that sounded like orders barked through a storm. To be Sith was to command, not to ask, to take, not to wait. Their temples weren't places of worship, but engines, places where energy was gathered, refined, and unleashed. For centuries, maybe millennia, they were isolated. Korriban was their entire universe. They were the Sith, and that word meant them, their people, their blood, their legacy inscribed in the stone of their tombs. They had their own empires that rose and fell on that single dusty planet, their history written in conquests, and the names of their mighty dark lords, like the legendary King Adas, a ruler so powerful he was said to have unified the tribes and ruled for centuries. He was almost a myth. According to some stories, he led his people against an invasion by the Rakatan. The Sith under Adas fought them back and seized their secrets, learning for the first time that their own dark magic could be weaponized on a galactic scale. It proved to the Sith that they were not alone, and that the power they wielded could shape more than their homeworld. In a sense, Adas was the first to show the Sith what Empire could mean. To them, they were the center of the cosmos. Then the sky fell. The exiles showed up. Remember the Great Schism? The Jedi civil war on Titan that kicked the legions of Leto, the dark side users, the followers of Bogan, out into the cold, unforgiving void of the galaxy? Well, they were a ragged fleet of fallen Jedi, powerful in the Force, but now homeless, bitter, and brimming with a rage that had been festering over generations of wandering. They were adrift, a people without a home, nursing a grievance that defined them. And then, their Force-driven instincts, their hunger for a power base, led them to the Korriban system. The planet shone in the Force like a black beacon, a siren call of pure, untamed dark side energy. They saw the Sith species as savages, powerful, dangerous savages, but savages nonetheless, sitting on a goldmine of dark side power they didn't fully understand how to wield on a galactic scale. The exiles didn't seek to learn from them. They sought to conquer, and conquer they did. Using their superior, codified Force techniques, telekinetic assaults, Force lightning, mental domination, and their advanced technology, the fallen Jedi overwhelmed the native Sith tribes. It wasn't a single, swift war. It was a brutal, grinding campaign of subjugation, pitting the rigid discipline of the Jedi exiles against the ferocious, but disunified, strength of the Sith natives. But here's the crucial, brilliantly twisted part of the story, the moment that defined the next 10,000 years of galactic conflict. They performed a complete cultural and political merger. The exiles, led by the first of the new Dark Lords, were cunning. They realized that brute force alone wouldn't grant them lasting control. A perpetually rebellious slave population on a world this powerful would be a nightmare. So, they did something far more insidious. The most powerful among the exiles set themselves up as god kings over the native population. They didn't destroy the Sith culture. They elevated themselves to the top of it. They took Sith pureblood nobles as spouses, forging political and blood alliances. They learned the native Sith language, making it the official tongue of their new empire. They didn't dismiss Sith alchemy as primitive. They incorporated it into their own dark side practices, refining it with their Jedi knowledge into something even more potent and terrifying. They adopted the Sith aesthetic. The pyramids became their temples. The tombs of the ancient Dark Lords became their places of pilgrimage. They took the native Sith's reverence for strength and made it the core of their own code. In a matter of a few generations, a new hybrid culture was born, a monstrous and glorious fusion of Jedi discipline and Sith savagery. The fallen Jedi were no longer just exiles. They had become the new ruling caste of an entire species and its empire. And in the final, ultimate act of cultural theft, they took the name of the people they had subjugated. They stopped calling themselves the Legions of Leto. They started calling themselves the Sith. This is where the names Ajunta Pal, Tulak Horde, Marka Ragnos, Ludo Kresh, and Naga Sado enter the story, the first generation of the Dark Lords of the Sith. Ajunta Pal was the first among them, the original exile who took the title Dark Lord, a warrior philosopher haunted by guilt yet consumed by his pride. His tomb still lies on Korriban, whispering in the dark. Tulak Horde followed, a duelist so skilled his lightsaber style became legend. He conquered worlds not through strategy, but through sheer mastery of the blade. Then came Marka Ragnos, the iron-fisted ruler who held the Empire together in its golden age, a being so revered that his spirit continued to influence Sith politics for centuries after death. When Ragnos died, his funeral sparked one of the most defining power struggles in Sith history, between Ludo Kresh, the conservative, and Naga Sado, the ambitious revolutionary. Sado's experiments in alchemy and hybridization produced weapons and creatures that defied reason. He even invaded the Republic, pushing the Jedi into one of their earliest wars with the Sith. His defeat sent the Sith Empire into hiding, but his legacy of experimentation and ambition became the blueprint for every Sith Lord who followed. And lurking even further in the shadows was Karnes Muir, the creator of the Muir Talisman, an artifact capable of turning entire populations into mindless thralls under his control. Muir's story blurs the line between science and sorcery. He represents that perfect, horrifying synthesis of Jedi intellect and Sith instinct. The word Sith underwent a fundamental permanent shift. It was no longer an ethnic identifier, meaning a red-skinned native of Korriban. It was now a title, a religious designation. It meant a Dark Lord of the Sith Empire, which could be a human, a near-human, a hybrid, or, occasionally, a particularly powerful and loyal pureblood who had proven their worth to the new regime. The religion of the dark side and the identity of a species became permanently, and for historians, confusingly intertwined. This new Sith Empire, born from this violent and pragmatic fusion, became a terrifying galactic power. They were no longer wandering exiles. They were the masters of a territory. They built a war machine fueled by dark side magic and the labor of countless slaves. They constructed massive, triangular battleships that would foreshadow the Star Destroyers of a later era. They forged their first true lightsabers, the red blades, often achieved by using synthetic crystals bled with hate and pain, becoming the symbol of their rage and their stolen power. For 1,000 years, this empire grew in the shadows of the unknown regions, biding its time, building its strength, while the Jedi and the Republic, basking in the light of their victory, probably assumed their old enemies had simply faded away into myth. The legacy of the original Sith species is one of profound tragedy. Over the centuries of interbreeding and cultural domination, the pure-blood Sith became rarer. Their distinct genetic and cultural identity was slowly absorbed, diluted, and ultimately erased by the very exiles who had taken their name and their home. Their world, Korriban, was renamed Moraband by a later generation, perhaps in a final effort to erase the original owners from history. It became a sacred tomb world for the Dark Lords of the new Sith, a place of pilgrimage for a religion that had co-opted its history, a ghost haunted by the spirits of the people it had consumed. You know that line in A New Hope? For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. It sounds noble, almost serene, doesn't it? A long, unbroken golden age. But my friend Obi-Wan Kenobi, in his wisdom, is glossing over a bloody, galaxy-spanning reality. Those 1,000 generations weren't a single, peaceful afternoon in the Jedi archives. They were a relentless, grinding struggle for survival, punctuated by eruptions of apocalyptic violence that threatened to tear the very fabric of civilization apart. This is the stuff of myth and legend, where history blurs into nightmare. These were the wars that literally sculpted the ideological landscape of the galaxy. Let's set the stage properly. In one corner, the Sith Empire. We left them as a hybrid culture, a fusion of fallen Jedi exiles and the native Sith species of Korriban. For 1,000 years, they haven't been idle. They festered in the unknown regions like a wound in the Force, building their strength, honing their dark side powers into refined weapons of war. In the other corner, the Galactic Republic and its Jedi Order. The Jedi have solidified from the loose philosophical seekers of Tython into a formalized, structured, religious and peacekeeping organization. They have built their great temple on Coruscant, a beacon of light and order. They've established a strict code. There is no emotion, there is peace, and serve as diplomats, mediators and guardians. They have grown comfortable, perhaps even complacent. The Great Schism is a distant, almost mythological event. For a long, blissful age, they likely believed the threat of the dark side exiles was gone, vanished into the void. They were wrong. The first cataclysmic collision between these two diametrically opposed civilizations is known as the Great Hyperspace War. A Republic exploration vessel, the Starbreaker 12, commanded by the siblings Gav and Jory Darrigan, is testing a new hyperspace route. They aren't soldiers, they're ambitious scouts, maybe a little reckless. Their jump goes catastrophically wrong, or perhaps miraculously right, and they tumble out of hyperspace, deep within the borders of the Sith Empire, right in the Korriban system. They are immediately captured. The Sith are thrown into chaos. The reigning Dark Lord, Marka Ragnos, is an old, powerful and cunning ruler who has maintained a tense peace for centuries. He sees the Republic ship for what it is, a herald of a larger, technologically advanced civilization. He preaches caution, understanding the existential threat a full-scale war could pose. But fate intervenes. Ragnos dies. His death ignites a violent power struggle between two powerful Sith lords. The conservative Ludo Kresh, who fears the outsiders and wants to fortify the Empire, and the wildly ambitious Naga Sado. Sado sees the Republic not as a threat, but as the opportunity of a lifetime. He engineers a brilliant, deceptive ploy. He helps Yori Daragon escape back to the Republic, but secretly plants a tracking device on her ship. Simultaneously, he frames Gav Daragon for the assassination of his rival, Ludo Kresh, making it look like a Republic-backed murder. He then uses the panic and rage of the Sith to have himself declared the new Dark Lord. Now, with a map to the Republic and a casus belli, Sado launches his war. But this isn't a conventional invasion. It is a display of Sith power on a scale the galaxy has never witnessed. Sado uses Sith magic and alchemy as weapons of mass destruction. From his secret meditation sphere, he projects massive, galaxy-wide illusions. Phantom fleets so powerful and tangible, they can exchange laser fire with real Republic warships, causing real destruction. He attacks multiple core worlds simultaneously, including Coruscant itself, creating panic and confusion, stretching the Republic defense fleet to its breaking point. The Republic and Jedi are completely overwhelmed. This is a form of warfare beyond their comprehension. How do you fight an enemy whose main weapon is a shared nightmare? Planets are set ablaze. The Sith ground forces, led by terrifying Massassi warriors and supported by dark side beasts, cut through Republic armies. For a moment, it looks like the Republic will fall. The turning point is a classic, almost poetic Sith failure. Ludo Kresh, it turns out, had faked his own death. Believing Sado's aggression has doomed the Empire, he attacks Sado's fleet from the rear in the middle of the crucial battle of Primus Golud. This betrayal shatters Sado's concentration, causing his phantom fleets to flicker and fail. Seizing the moment, the Republic Navy, led by the formidable Empress Teta and supported by Jedi Knights, counterattacks with everything they have. Sado, facing defeat, makes a final, monstrous play. He uses the Force to trigger a solar flare from the star Primus Golud, destroying much of both his own and Kresh's fleet in a fiery apocalypse. He then flees with his remaining loyalists to the remote jungle moon of Yavin 4, where he would eventually entomb himself, placing himself in a state of suspended animation. The Republic and Jedi, bloodied, traumatized, and horrified by the sheer destructive power they have witnessed, make a fateful decision. They cannot allow the Sith Empire to ever rise again. They launch a punitive counter-invasion, a crusade into the heart of Sith space. They lay waste to Korriban. They bombard the surface, desecrate the ancient tombs of Sith lords, and try to scourge the dark side from the galaxy with laser fire. They fail, and in their failure, they plant the seeds for 10,000 years of future conflict. They believed they had won a final decisive victory, but all they had done was shatter the Sith Empire into 1,000 fragments. They destroyed the central government, but countless Sith lords, acolytes, and warships survived, scattering like embers into the winds of the unknown regions. These survivors were now united by a burning, generational, and very personal hatred for the Republic and the Jedi. This is the critical, tragic lesson the Jedi would fail to learn again and again. You cannot kill an ideology with a lightsaber. You can't purge a philosophy with a fleet. All you do is scatter the spores, and those spores will find dark, fertile ground in which to grow. This cycle of war, Pyrrhic Jedi victory, Sith scattering, and Sith resurgence defines the next several thousand years. The next great eruption is the Great Sith War, and it's a different kind of conflict altogether. If the Great Hyperspace War was a clash of empires, this is a war of corruption and insurgency. This is the era of Exarchon and Ulic Qel-Droma, names that would become synonymous with tragedy and fallen potential within the Jedi Order. Exar Kun begins as a Jedi scholar, a prodigy. He is brilliant, charismatic, and deeply arrogant. He becomes obsessed with the history of the Sith, not out of a desire to understand the enemy, but out of a belief that he can master their power without falling to it. He is, of course, wrong. His quest for knowledge leads him to the tomb of the ancient Sith Lord Freedon Nad on the planet Onderon, and then to Yavin 4, where the spirit of the long-dead Naga Sadow still lingers. There, in the dark side nexus of the Massassi temples, he is fully corrupted and reborn as a new kind of Sith Lord. He isn't an emperor with a fleet, he is a revolutionary, a terrorist, a cult leader. His fellow Dark Lord presents an even more heartbreaking story. Ulic was one of the most celebrated Jedi Knights of his generation, a military genius and a hero. Faced with the rising threat of the Krath, a dark side cult of decadent nobles, Ulic proposes a dangerously bold strategy. He will infiltrate them, learn their secrets, and destroy them from within. It's the classic fight fire with fire mistake. Immersed in the Krath's culture of hedonism and power, manipulated by the scheming Ali Makito, and cut off from the light side, Ulic falls. He doesn't just join the enemy, he becomes one of its most powerful leaders, eventually allying with Exar Kun. Together, Kun and Keldroma shatter the Jedi Order from within. They turn other Jedi, preying on their doubts and ambitions. The Great Sith War becomes a Jedi civil war, a fratricidal conflict that pits brother against brother, master against apprentice. The devastation of the Jedi Library world of Ossus is a galactic tragedy, on par with the burning of the Library of Alexandria. As a supernova threatened the world, Jedi and Sith fought amidst the greatest repository of knowledge in the galaxy, trying to save or loot the artifacts as the world was consumed by fire. Countless holocrons, scrolls, and ancient texts were lost forever, crippling the Jedi's connection to their own history. The war culminates in the catastrophic Battle of Malachor V. While the details are lost to legend, it involved a super weapon of unimaginable power, the Mass Shadow Generator, which created such a concentrated field of death and destruction that it literally tore a wound in the Force. The psychic shockwave of so many lives extinguished at once created echoes that would ripple through the Force for millennia, and even created beings like Darth Nihilus, who became a personification of that hunger. The war ended with Ulic Qel-Droma's poignant redemption, stripped of the Force by his own brother, and Exar Kun's final desperate act, sacrificing the entire Massassi race on Yavin 4 in a ritual to tear his own spirit from his body, trapping it within the temples as a vengeful dark side ghost that would haunt the moon for 4,000 years. Forget what you think you know about good guys and bad guys. Revan's story smashes those concepts to pieces. He wasn't a Jedi who fell. He wasn't a Sith who was redeemed. He was a man who walked both paths to their absolute extremes, and in doing so, created a new philosophy that terrified both sides. Before he was a myth, he was just a man. One of the most gifted Jedi the Order had ever seen. A brilliant strategist, a charismatic leader, a warrior without equal. When the Mandalorians came crashing into the Republic, laying waste to worlds and committing atrocities, the Jedi Council did what they always do. They counseled caution. They urged patience. They wanted to wait to study, to understand the threat. Revan looked at the burning worlds and the bodies piling up and said no. He and his friend Malak, along with a huge number of other Jedi who were just as sick of the Council's inaction, went to war. They defied the Council. This was the beginning of the Revanchists. And on the battlefield, he was a force of nature. He studied Mandalorian tactics, their culture, their weaknesses, and then he exploited them without mercy. This is where the legend begins. At the Battle of Malachor V, Revan engineered a final horrific solution to end the war. He used the Mass Shadow Generator that created a gravitational field so intense it crushed the entire Mandalorian fleet, along with a good chunk of the Republic's own forces, and literally shattered the planet's surface. It was a victory born of atrocity. Revan won the war, but he did it by staring into the abyss for so long that the abyss stared back. After the war, Revan and Malak vanished into the unknown regions. The official story was they were chasing down the last remnants of the Mandalorian fleet. The truth was far more terrifying. They had discovered the source of the Mandalorian aggression, an ancient, terrifying Sith Empire, hidden away for millennia, waiting to strike. And in confronting this ancient evil, Revan and Malak fell. But their fall wasn't a simple seduction. It wasn't some dark side spirit whispering in their ear. Revan fell because he believed it was necessary. He saw the Sith Empire's power and the Republic's weakness, and he concluded that the only way to save the Republic was to conquer it first, to unite it under a single iron will, to forge it into a weapon strong enough to survive the coming storm. He didn't embrace the dark side for power's sake. He embraced it as a tool. He and Malak knelt before the Sith Emperor, Vitiate, and were reborn as Dark Lords. They took the names Darth Revan and Darth Malak, and they built their own Sith Empire to wage war on the very Republic they had just saved. This is crucial. He was a revolutionary who believed the ends justified the most horrific means. He was a tyrant who thought tyranny was the only path to survival. As Darth Revan, he was even more brilliant and terrifying than he was as a Jedi. He turned Jedi to his cause. He convinced them he was right. He was a Sith who used strategy and reason as effectively as he used his lightsaber. But his apprentice, Malak, was less subtle. Malak was ambition and raw power without Revan's genius. And in a pivotal moment, seeing a chance to kill Revan and the Jedi who had cornered them, Malak opened fire on Revan's ship, hoping to take them all out. He failed to kill Revan. The Jedi captured Revan, his mind shattered and his memory a blank slate. And the Jedi Council, in one of the most morally questionable acts in their long history, saw an opportunity. Instead of helping him, they reprogrammed him. They implanted a false identity, turning the most dangerous Sith Lord in the galaxy into a loyal Republic soldier. They tried to use their greatest enemy as a weapon. So Revan began again, as a nobody. He woke up on a Republic ship with no memory, just as the Sith, now led by Darth Malak, began their assault. This amnesiac Revan, alongside new companions like Karth Onasi and Bastila Shan, a Jedi with a rare gift for battle meditation, was forced to relive his own war, fighting the very empire he built. He travelled the galaxy, following the trail of his own past, making new choices, forming new bonds and slowly discovering the horrifying truth. He was the villain of the story. This journey is the heart of Revan's myth. It's a man literally confronting the ghost of who he used to be. And when he finally regains his memories, he isn't just the Jedi or the Sith, he's both. He contains multitudes. He remembers the cold logic of his Sith philosophy and feels the warmth of the connections he made as a redeemed man. He is a walking contradiction. He defeats Malak, he ends the war he started. But his story doesn't end there. His influence is where his true power lies. For the Jedi, Revan was a nightmare and a revelation. He was proof that their greatest hero could become their greatest enemy. His fall forced them to confront their own failings, their dogmatic slowness, their political inertia. But his redemption also offered a terrifying new idea, that a fallen Jedi could come back. This created a schism in Jedi philosophy. The hardliners saw him as a monster who could never be trusted. The reformers saw him as proof that the Force was more complex than their simple light and dark dichotomy. For the Sith, his impact was even greater. He was a philosopher king. He left behind holocrons and teachings that were studied for 1,000 years. He was the one who proved that the Sith could be more than just ravenous predators. They could be strategists, rulers, and architects. His very existence was a critique of the brute force Sith like Malak. Darth Bane, the architect of the Rule of Two, studied Revan extensively. Revan's idea of a Sith Lord who operated from the shadows, using patience and cunning rather than open warfare, was a direct inspiration for Bane's grand plan. Revan's ultimate legacy is that he transcended the war itself. He became a symbol. To some, he is the betrayer, the Jedi who turned and nearly destroyed the galaxy. To others, he is the prodigal knight, the man who found his way home and saved the Republic twice. To a few, he is the ultimate pragmatist, the man who was willing to bear the title of villain to prepare the galaxy for a threat it couldn't even comprehend. He is the man who became a myth. And the most fascinating part of the myth is that we can never quite decide what he was, a hero, a villain, or something else entirely. He forced the Jedi and the Sith to look in a mirror, and neither of them liked what they saw. In a universe built on a clear division between light and dark, Revan is the enduring, powerful, and unsettling shade of grey. After the Jedi Civil War, after Revan was gone and Malak was dust, the Sith didn't only vanish, they splintered. And from the shattered pieces of their empire rose something new, something far more terrifying than an army. It wasn't an empire, but a cancer. This is the story of the Sith Triumvirate. 3 beings so broken, so twisted by the Force, that they became living embodiments of ruin. Forget the rule of 2. Forget the grand schemes of Palpatine. This is different. This is personal, intimate, and cosmic. The Triumvirate wasn't built on a code. It was built on a shared, profound wound in the Force. They were Darth Traya, the Lord of Betrayal, Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger, and Darth Sion, the Lord of Pain. Let's start with the architects, the mastermind, Darth Traya. Before she was Traya, she was Traya, a Jedi Master, a historian, a teacher of Revan. She was brilliant, philosophical, and she saw the flaws in the Jedi Order with painful clarity. She believed in the power of teaching, of shaping great individuals. But she was exiled from the Jedi Order. Why isn't entirely clear, but likely for her unorthodox, manipulative methods. Then she found the Sith, and for a time, she became Darth Traya, a Dark Lord. She saw the Sith as a means to an end, a way to teach a harsh, necessary lesson to the galaxy. But she was betrayed by her own apprentices. That's a recurring theme with her, and cast out, stripped of her connection to the Force. This is the core of Traya. She is a woman who has been betrayed by the Jedi and the Sith. She has been abandoned by the Force itself, and from that place of absolute, utter isolation, she develops a philosophy that is uniquely her own. She sees the Force as the ultimate tyrant. She believes every action, every choice, every life and death is just a move in a game the Force is playing with itself. The light side, the dark side, it's all a lie. The Force uses everyone as its pawns, creating balance through endless, meaningless suffering. Her goal? Not to rule the galaxy, not to destroy the Jedi. Her goal was to find a way to kill the Force itself. She wanted to teach the galaxy to live without its crutch, to find its own meaning, to silence the cosmic noise so that individual will could truly mean something. She was a nihilist who wanted to set everyone free. To achieve this impossible goal, she needed weapons, and she found 2 of the most terrifying weapons imaginable. First, Darth Sion, the Lord of Pain. Sion isn't powerful because of some great mastery of the Force. His power is brutally simple. He refuses to die. He is a corpse held together by pure, unadulterated hate and pain. His body is shattered, a collection of broken bones and torn flesh, and the moment he stops concentrating, the moment his rage flickers, he should fall apart. But he doesn't. He uses the pain as fuel. Every ache, every memory of 1,000 defeats, every ounce of suffering is a brick in the wall that keeps him alive. He is immortal not through wisdom or power, but through sheer, stubborn agony. He is the perfect enforcer. You cannot kill him. You can only make him angrier. He serves Traya because she offers him purpose for his endless pain, and perhaps the promise of finally being able to inflict that pain on the Jedi who he believes wronged him. Then there is the other end of the spectrum, Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger. If Sion is defined by clinging to life, Nihilus is defined by consuming it. He is not a man, he is a phenomenon. He is a void, a crack in reality. He doesn't speak words, he speaks a language that drains the life from everything around him. His power is an endless, insatiable hunger that forces him to devour the life force of entire planets. He wears a mask and robes not for ceremony, but to contain the nothingness that he has become. Nihilus is the ultimate embodiment of the dark side's consumption. He doesn't have ambitions or philosophies. He has an appetite. He is a black hole that walks like a man. He consumed the planet Qatar, killing every living thing on it, including a secret gathering of the galaxy's strongest Jedi Masters, feasting on their collective power in an instant. He is so divorced from humanity that he is less a Sith Lord and more a natural disaster. Traya helped create him, but she knew he was a weapon she could not ultimately control. He was a force that would eventually consume the entire galaxy, including her. This is the Triumvirate, a philosopher who wants to kill the universe's soul, a man too angry to die, and a hole in the world that eats everything. Their war against the Jedi wasn't a war of armies, it was a shadow war, an assassination. Traya using her knowledge of the Jedi, and Sion, using his unkillable body, hunted down the Jedi one by one. They didn't want a glorious battle, they wanted extermination. They broke the Jedi Order, instilling a fear so profound that the surviving Jedi went into hiding, cutting themselves off from the Force to avoid being sensed by Nihilus. The story of their downfall is the story of the Jedi exile, Mitra Surik, another wound in the Force, a general who, at Malachor V following Revan's orders, activated the mass shadow generator and, in that moment of unimaginable death, instinctively cut herself off from the Force to survive the psychic backlash. She was a void, like Nihilus, but empty and silent, not hungry. Traya saw her as the ultimate student, the perfect tool to teach the galaxy to live without the Force, and perhaps the only one who could understand Nihilus enough to destroy him. The end of the Triumvirate is as poetic as their existence. Sion is defeated not by a more powerful lightsaber blow, but by being convinced to let go. The Jedi exile talks to him, reaches the tiny shred of humanity buried under millennia of pain, and convinces him that his love for her, or his obsession with her, is stronger than his hate. For a single moment he stops hating, and without that hate, his body finally, peacefully, turns to dust. Nihilus is defeated by his own nature. He tries to consume the Jedi exile, but he can't. She is a void, like him. There is nothing for him to eat. Trying to devour her is like one black hole trying to swallow another. He exhausts himself, becomes vulnerable, and is destroyed. He starves to death at a feast. And Traya? She is defeated by her own teachings. She raises the Jedi exile to be the perfect example of her philosophy, a being who can act, who can wield immense power, without being a slave to the Force. And in the end, the exile uses that very independence to defy her, to choose connection and life over Traya's desired silence. Traya is killed, but in her final moments, she admits that the exile has given her the answer she sought, that the echo of one's actions, the influence on others, is a kind of immortality that exists outside the Force's control. The Sith Triumvirate left no empire. They left no legacy of rule. They were a brief, dark fever dream of the Force. But their influence is profound. They represent the absolute extremes of the dark side, divorced from any political goal. They are the proof that the Force, when wounded, can create monsters that make even the Sith look like children playing with fire. They were the dark side dreaming, and it was a nightmare from which the galaxy barely woke up. This is the story of Vitiate, the immortal emperor. To understand Vitiate, you have to forget every other Sith Lord you've ever heard of. Palpatine wanted control. Revan wanted to save the Republic by conquering it. Bane wanted to perfect the Sith Order. Vitiate's ambition was of a different magnitude entirely. He didn't want to rule the galaxy. He didn't want to defeat the Jedi. He wanted to consume existence itself, to transmute the life force of every living thing into the fuel for his own eternal godlike consciousness. He was, quite simply, the most successful predator the galaxy has ever known. His birth name was Tenebrae, born to a Sith pure-blood tribe on the planet Medrias. His mother was a powerful sorceress, his father a weak-willed tribal king. From his earliest moments, Tenebrae was different. He wasn't only strong in the Force, his connection was a void, a hunger. He saw his father's rule as pathetic, a failure of will, and at the age of 10, in an act of such chilling precocity it defies belief, he performed his first great feat of Sith sorcery. He discovered a ritual that allowed him to disembody his own spirit and possess his father. Using his father's body, he then murdered his own mother. A 10-year-old boy, so consumed by a need for absolute power, orchestrated the death of his own parents as his first real step toward dominion. He renamed his world Nathema, a Sith word implying a journey or a trial. It was a fitting name, for it was to become the site of his greatest trial and his ultimate transcendence. He rose quickly in the fractured Sith Empire that existed after the death of Marka Ragnos. He was cunning, powerful, and utterly ruthless. But when the Great Hyperspace War erupted under Naga Sado, Vitiate, as he now called himself, saw the fatal flaw. He witnessed the Sith Empire tear itself apart with infighting. Its defeat caused not by Jedi strength, but by Sith ambition turning inward. A lesser being, might have sought to reform the Sith, to instill discipline. Vitiate drew a far more radical conclusion. The very concept of a Sith empire with multiple lords was flawed. The only way to achieve true, lasting power was to eliminate all other voices. The Sith Empire needed to become a single, immortal will. He would not rule, he would be the Empire. This philosophy culminated in the single, most horrific act of Sith sorcery ever recorded. He lured every Sith Lord anathema, every powerful Force user, thousands of them, to a gathering, promising them a new era of power. As they gathered, their combined dark side energy creating a maelstrom of power, Vitiate began the ritual. He consumed them. He devoured their life force, their knowledge, their memories, their very essence. The ritual was so voracious, so absolute, that it erased their echoes from the Force. They were utterly annihilated. The backlash of this act was cataclysmic. The planet itself died. The Force, scorched and drained from the world, fled. No life could grow there. No bird could fly through its skies. It was a dead rock, a monument to Vitiate's hunger. The energy he absorbed shattered the boundaries of his mortality. His consciousness now anchored to the galaxy by the stolen lives of an entire world. He was no longer a man, he was a phenomenon. With this godlike power, he took the remnants of the Sith Empire that were loyal to him and vanished into the unknown regions. For 1300 years, he built his true Sith Empire in absolute secrecy. This was not the Sith Empire of old. He was its absolute, undisputed God Emperor. He ruled from a meditative chamber, his consciousness so vast he could touch the minds of his subjects across vast distances. He created the Dark Council, 12 powerful Sith Lords, to manage the mundane affairs of state, but they were utterly subservient to him. They were administrators of his will, their squabbles a form of entertainment for him, a way to ensure none grew strong enough to challenge him. He cultivated an aura of pure, inscrutable menace. His voice was a psychic command, his presence a weight that could crush a normal mind. He was patience incarnate. While the Republic and Jedi enjoyed a golden age, believing the Sith extinct, he waited. He built fleets, trained armies, and nurtured his empire like a gardener tending a poisonous plant, all while his hunger grew. His first great re-emergence was the Great Galactic War. His empire erupted from the unknown regions and slammed into the Republic with a force and fury it hadn't seen in millennia. This war was different. For Vitiate, it was a harvest. The death, the suffering, the fear, the chaos. It was all sustenance for him. The war was a feast. It culminated in the sacking of Coruscant, a masterstroke of psychological warfare where his forces held the galactic capital hostage, forcing the Republic to sign the humiliating Treaty of Coruscant, which crippled them and ceded vast territories to the Sith. It was a stunning military and political victory. He was planning the main course. He intended to perform a second ritual, far greater than the one on Nathema. His plan was to consume all life in the galaxy, every being on every world, from the core to the outer rim. He would feast on the death of trillions and ascend to a state of existence beyond godhood, becoming the sole, eternal consciousness in a silent, dead universe. This plan was thwarted, remarkably, by his own servants, his Sith-castrated Roth and the Jedi, known as the Hero of Tython. They confronted him in his sanctum. But you cannot kill something like Vitiate with a lightsaber. His physical form was just a vessel, one of many he had prepared over the centuries. His consciousness was a virus, a self-sustaining pattern of will and dark side energy. The destruction of his body was an inconvenience, not a defeat. This is where his story transcends from a Dark Lord's tale to a cosmic horror. He had long since prepared for this. He had children, not out of love or legacy, but for the sole purpose of creating perfect Force-sensitive vessels. He possessed the body of his son, Valkorion, and in this new powerful form, he did something that reveals his truly alien mindset. He started over. He grew bored with the Sith Empire. He saw its constant infighting and dogmatic obsession with the dark side as a limiting, primitive dead end. So, in the far reaches of the unknown regions, using his Valkorion persona, he built a new empire from the ground, the eternal empire of Zakul. This wasn't a Sith empire, it was a technologically advanced, highly militaristic society that worshipped him as the immortal emperor, the benevolent and wise father of his people. He presented himself as a stern but caring god-king, while his original Sith Empire and the Republic bled each other dry in a cold war he had himself engineered. Think about the sheer, monstrous genius and patience of this. He was the secret architect behind two opposing galactic superpowers and the public god-king of a third hidden one. He was playing a game of chess against himself, weakening the entire galaxy, making it soft and vulnerable, all to prepare it for his eventual consumption. He turned millennia of galactic history into a farmer tending his livestock, fattening them up for the slaughter. The Eternal Empire's subsequent invasion, the War of the Star Fortresses, was simply the next phase of this harvest. A culling of the herd to stir up fear and despair, the most potent flavors for his final meal. His final end came at the hands of the Outlander, a commander he had imprisoned in carbonite for years, and his own rebellious family, his sons Arcan and Thexan, and his daughter Vaylin. But even in death he was a threat. His spirit was so powerful, so saturated with stolen life and will, that it refused to dissipate. He became a malignant presence in the Force, a ghost that could still possess the living and continue his schemes from beyond the grave. Vitiate's legacy is the ultimate warning of the dark side's true nature. Vitiate ceased to be Tenebrae long before he was defeated. He became a concept, the concept of hunger. He is the logical, terrifying conclusion of the Sith Code. The Force shall free me. Vitiate sought freedom from death, from mortality, from the very cycle of life itself. And in doing so, he became the galaxy's most profound and successful parasite. He didn't want to rule the stars. He wanted to swallow them, to make their light and life a part of his own eternal dark existence. He is a chilling reminder that some evils are not just opposed to life. They are an existential threat to the very concept of existence. Now let's talk about the single most successful idea in the history of the Sith. An idea so powerful, so perfectly twisted, that it took a broken, scattered cult and turned it into a weapon that would, 1,000 years later, shatter the Jedi Order and conquer the galaxy. This is the story of the Rule of Two, and the man who forged it from the ashes of his own failure, Darth Bane. To understand why the Rule of Two was so revolutionary, you have to understand the world Bane was born into. This is the era of the New Sith Wars, a conflict that had been raging for so long it had become a background hum of misery in the galaxy. The Sith weren't a hidden, cunning order. They were a massive, bloated army. They had legions, they had territories, they had a Dark Lord in charge of it all. And beneath him, countless Sith Lords and acolytes all vying for power. It was, for all intents and purposes, a dark mirror of the Jedi and the Republic. And it was losing. The Sith of this era were their own worst enemy. They were so consumed with infighting, with betraying each other for a slightly higher rank, that they could never deliver a killing blow to the Jedi. They were like a pack of rabid dogs, so busy fighting over the scraps that they never went after the real meal. The Sith Code's emphasis on strength through conflict had been twisted into a suicidal cycle of self-cannibalization. The strong would rise, only to be dragged down by a dozen weaker Sith working together out of jealousy. It was a system designed for failure. Bane was born into this mess. His original name was Dessel, a poor miner on the brutal world of Apatros, crushing rock for a pittance to pay off his father's debts. He lived a life of pure, back-breaking labor and rage. He hated the world, he hated his father, he hated the company that owned him. That rage was his fuel. He escaped by joining the Sith army during the war, and his innate, terrifying power in the Force quickly blazed to the surface. He was a brute, a juggernaut on the battlefield, using a form of lightsaber combat that relied on pure, overwhelming power. They called him Bane for the Baneor he once mined, and the name stuck. He rose through the ranks of the Brotherhood of Darkness, the current Sith Order led by Lord Khan. But Bane was a smart brute. He saw the flaw. He saw Lord Khan not as a true Dark Lord, but as a politician, a compromiser. Khan's big idea to unite the Sith was a philosophy called the Brotherhood of Darkness, which tried to eliminate the infighting by having all Sith consider themselves equals. To Bane, this was the most disgusting, heretical idea imaginable. It was a betrayal of the very core of the Sith. The strong should rule the weak, not pretend to be their brothers. This philosophy, he realized, was creating a legion of mediocre Sith, diluting the power, making them weak. His disillusionment became complete when he discovered an ancient Sith holocron. It was the holocron of Darth Revan, and through it he learned the true history of the Sith. He learned about the ancient powerful lords like Nagasado, Exar Kun, and the Sith Emperor Vitiate. These were beings of immense, singular power. They weren't part of a brotherhood, they ruled. They understood that the dark side was not a tool for the masses. It was a razor, a scalpel, meant for a single, worthy hand. And in that moment, sitting in the darkness, with Revan's ghostly teachings, Bane had his epiphany. The Sith couldn't win as an army. They would always betray themselves. The only way for the Sith to survive and ultimately triumph was to stop being an army and start being a lineage, a secret, a myth. He formulated the rule of two. Its logic is brutally simple, a thing of dark, elegant beauty. Two there should be, no more, no less. One to embody the power, the other to crave it. First, it solves the problem of infighting. With only two Sith in the entire galaxy, the apprentice cannot overthrow the Master by forming a coalition. They must become stronger, smarter, and more cunning than the Master on their own merit. The Master, in turn, is forced to constantly grow in power to stay ahead of the ambitious apprentice snapping at their heels. It creates a self-perpetuating cycle of improvement. The Master gains a powerful tool and an heir. The apprentice gains a teacher and a goal. It turns the Sith's inherent betrayal from a weakness into an engine. Second, it solves the problem of dilution. No more thousands of Sith squabbling over power. All the knowledge, all the power, all the focus of the Sith Order is concentrated into just two individuals. The power isn't shared, it's compounded with each generation. Each master teaches the apprentice everything they know, and the apprentice is expected to go further, to discover new secrets, to add to the Sith's collective power before they kill their master and take on an apprentice of their own. Imagine a snowball rolling down a hill for 1,000 years, gathering more and more snow. That's the power of the Sith under the rule of two. Third, and most importantly, it makes the Sith invisible. They no longer have empires, or fleets, or temples, until the end. They operate from the shadows. They use proxies, puppets, and secret societies to manipulate galactic events. The Jedi, who are attuned to sensing the dark side, would be looking for a massive, glaring wound in the Force. The rule of two turned the Sith into a needle, hidden in the haystack of the galaxy. They could be politicians, business leaders, criminals, anywhere. The Jedi's greatest strength, their connection to the Force, became their greatest weakness because they were looking for the wrong thing. Bane didn't just come up with this idea, he enacted it with cold-blooded finality. He turned on the Brotherhood of Darkness. In the final battle of the war, the Battle of Ruusan, he tricked Lord Khan. Khan, in a desperate last-ditch effort to kill the Jedi Army of Light, created a thought bomb, a Sith technique that draws on the life force of all nearby Force users to create a cataclysmic explosion. Bane knew about it. He let Khan believe he would join the ritual, but at the last moment, Bane shielded himself. The thought bomb detonated, wiping out every single Jedi and Sith on the planet. The entire Brotherhood of Darkness and the Jedi's main army were erased in an instant. In one stroke, Bane had achieved his goal. He had annihilated the weak, bloated Sith Order, and he walked away from the devastation, the last Sith Lord in the galaxy, with his new apprentice, Zana, at his side. The Sith were now a ghost, a secret passed from master to apprentice for 1,000 years. The legacy of the rule of two is everything Bane dreamed it would be. It produced Sith Lords of unparalleled cunning and power, Darth Plagueis, who learned to manipulate midi-chlorians to create life, Darth Sidious, who mastered every form of Sith knowledge and used it to conquer the entire galaxy from the inside, becoming Emperor. It was the ultimate long game, but the rule of two also contained its own flaw, the very flaw Bane sought to eliminate, the flaw of the individual. It relied on each master being strong enough to control their apprentice, and each apprentice being worthy of the power they would inherit. In the end, Sidious never intended to be overthrown. He sought eternal life, breaking the cycle. He saw his apprentices not as heirs, but as disposable tools. In that, the rule of two finally died, but for 1,000 years, it worked. It was the perfect heresy, a secret so powerful it hid an entire religion in plain sight, waiting patiently for its time to strike. It was Darth Bane's masterpiece, and the most dangerous idea the Jedi never saw coming. Let's talk about the ultimate mystery. What happens to a Jedi when they die? It's one of the most profound and misunderstood concepts in the entire saga. Why do some Jedi get to linger as conscious spirits, while other, seemingly just as noble, knights vanish into the cosmic tapestry forever? The answer is a story of lost knowledge, immense spiritual sacrifice, and a form of immortality that is the absolute antithesis of what the Sith seek. First, we have to establish the baseline, the default state of a Jedi's death. For thousands of generations, when a Jedi died, they became one with the Force. This is a beautiful, serene, and final concept. Their physical body would often dissolve, a sign of their deep connection, and their life energy, their essence, would return to the cosmic force. The Force as a vast, cosmic ocean. A living being is a single, distinct wave upon that ocean. When they die, the wave settles, and its energy rejoins the whole. The individual consciousness, the memory of being a specific wave, the you that was Obi-Wan Kenobi or Kit Fisto, that dissipates. It's a return to a state of pure, undifferentiated energy. This was considered the natural, peaceful, and honourable end for a servant of the light. There was no after for the individual, only a return to the all. This is why the dark side's various methods of cheating death are such a perversion. Techniques like essence transfer, where a Sith Lord's consciousness invades and overwrites another body, or the cloning methods pursued by Palpatine, are acts of cosmic violence. They are the equivalent of a wave trying to tear itself from the ocean and nail itself to the shore. It might hold its form for a while, but it's stagnant, cut off from the source of its life, and it inevitably corrupts everything around it. It's a selfish, desperate clinging to individual existence at any cost. The mystery of the Force Ghost, properly known as the art of consciousness transference or Force projection, is something else entirely. It is about achieving such a state of selfless unity with the Force that you can consciously, willingly, and completely release your individual self at the moment of death, and in doing so, paradoxically, preserve it. This knowledge was not born within the Jedi Order of the Republic. It was a lost art, discovered in the deep, ancient past by a shamanistic cult on the distant, swampy planet of Neti. These mystics understood the Force in a way the structured, dogmatic Jedi did not. They realized that the key to eternal consciousness was not power, but enlightenment. It required the complete and utter annihilation of the ego. You couldn't just be a good person. You had to become a clear vessel, so empty of personal desire, fear, and attachment that the Force could flow through you without any distortion. At the moment of death, this state of pure being allowed your consciousness to imprint upon the cosmic Force rather than being dissolved by it. For millennia, this was a forgotten secret. The Jedi Order continued on, believing the peaceful return to the Force was the only path. This changed because of one man who was, ironically, often at odds with the Jedi Council, Master Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon was a maverick. He was deeply attuned to the living Force, the Force that exists in the present moment, in every leaf, every creature, every decision made right now. This focus on the here and now made him more open to unconventional paths. During his travels, he discovered fragments of this ancient Neti teaching. He didn't find a manual or a holocron. He found echoes of the philosophy, the first steps on the path. He began to practice it, learning to let go of his own self, his attachments, his very identity. He did not complete his training. He was killed by Darth Maul on Naboo before he could master the final, most difficult step, the conscious release at the moment of death. But he had come far enough. As he lay dying, his body failing, he performed the ultimate act of will and surrender. He let go. He released his identity into the Force. Because he had spent years purifying his spirit, his consciousness didn't simply dissolve, it was preserved. He became one with the cosmic Force, but the Qui-Gon part remained coherent, a self-aware presence within the infinite. There was a catch, however. His training was incomplete. He had learned how to retain his consciousness, but not how to manifest it. He could not appear as a visible, audible ghost. He became a voice, a whisper on the wind, a feeling of guidance in the heart of a sensitive being. It was his voice that guided Yoda during the Clone Wars to the mysterious planet where the Force priestesses resided, the current guardians of this ancient knowledge. Yoda's journey to learn this technique is the most detailed look we have at what it truly entails. And it's not a physical trial, but a spiritual one of almost unimaginable difficulty. He travelled to the Force planet, a place that was a conduit to the very heart of the wills, the foundational beings of the Force. There, he didn't learn new Force powers. He was subjected to a series of profound, terrifying tests. He had to confront his own shadow self, a dark side doppelganger that embodied all of his pride, his fear of failure, his latent anger, and the arrogance that came with being the Grand Master of the Jedi Order for centuries. He couldn't defeat it in combat. Every time he tried, it only grew stronger, mirroring his own power. He had to do something far more difficult. He had to acknowledge it. He had to look this embodiment of his every flaw in the eye and say, "You are a part of me." He had to accept his own darkness without being consumed by it. To achieve perfect selflessness, he first had to fully know himself. His final test was a vision of a future he feared most. The Jedi Temple in flames, the Republic fallen, his entire life's work turned to ash. He had to witness this apocalypse and not give in to despair. He had to accept that even this catastrophic failure was a part of the Force's larger, inscrutable flow. He had to release his attachment to his own legacy, to the very order he had dedicated his life to building. He had to find peace in the face of total ruin. He passed. He achieved the enlightenment required. He learned the final step. At the moment of death, a conscious being must actively, willingly, and joyfully release their own identity. It is not a passive fading away. It is an active choice to become one with the all, while maintaining the coherence of the self through sheer lack of ego. This is the brilliant, paradoxical heart of the mystery. The Sith try to achieve immortality by strengthening the self, by making their individual will so powerful it cannot be denied. They fail because the universe, the Force, is ultimately more powerful than any one being. The Jedi who master this technique achieve immortality by utterly eradicating the self. They become nothing, and in being nothing, they become everything. They are a perfect, selfless vessel, and because they are empty, the Force fills them and preserves their consciousness as a part of its own. This explains why so many great Jedi, Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, did not return as ghosts. They were heroic, powerful, and deeply committed to the light, but their identities were strongly tied to their roles as warriors, strategists, and guardians. That sense of self, however noble, acted as an anchor. Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan succeeded because they, each in their own way, learned to let go of those anchors. Obi-Wan had his entire world destroyed, his master, his love, his apprentice, and the Jedi Order itself. Through that suffering, he learned a profound detachment that prepared him for the final release. And then there's Anakin Skywalker. On paper, he shouldn't be able to do it. No training in the ancient rites, a lifetime of attachment, fear, anger, the classic recipe for dissolving back into the ocean with no conscious echo. Yet he appears on Endor as a luminous presence, at peace. How? There are two ways to read it, and both fit. First, the spiritual one. At the very end, Anakin finally does the one thing the technique demands. He lets go. He releases every claim he'd been clinging to. Power, fear of loss, the armor, the persona of Vader. He chooses his son over himself, compassion over domination, and accepts death without grasping for more time. That single total act of selflessness is the exact key the Force needs to preserve a consciousness. Think of it as a perfect last note, one true tone held without ego that resonates in the cosmic force instead of fading. Second, the hand on the shoulder one. Obi-Wan and Yoda already walked this path. In both legends and modern readings, it's implied they helped him across, opening the door, so to speak, so that his final choice could take. The Force isn't a bureaucracy, it's relationship. Guidance matters. A student can pass a gate if a master is waiting on the other side. His appearance matters too. He doesn't manifest as the broken, armoured husk who died on the Death Star. He shows up as the man he was when he last stood fully in the light. Young, clear-eyed. Force spirits don't have to mirror the body at death. They present the truth the Spirit recognizes. For Anakin, that truth is the self he lost and finally reclaimed. And the Endor pyre? That was closure for Luke. The armor returned to ash. The man inside had already stepped somewhere the fire couldn't reach. So, what can a Force ghost actually do? Their power is profound, but specific. They exist on a higher plane of the Force, and interacting with the physical world is difficult, like trying to push your hand through thick water. They can manifest visually and auditorily, but typically only to those who are deeply strong with and receptive to the Force. Luke sees them because he is open to them. Rey hears the voices of Jedi past because her connection is a conduit. A regular citizen would see and hear nothing. They are guides, not warriors. They cannot wield a lightsaber, move objects with telekinesis, or directly intervene in physical events. Their power is one of wisdom. They can provide perspective, remind a lost soul of who they are, and offer counsel at critical forks in the road. They are a compass, not an engine. They exist within the current of the Force. This allows them a perspective that transcends time and space. They can see the past and possible futures, understanding the broader tapestry of cause and effect in a way the living cannot. The ultimate expression of this is what Luke Skywalker did at the end of The Last Jedi. He did not become a Force ghost in that moment. He was still alive, but he performed the ultimate act of Force projection, a technique only possible for someone on the verge of this mastery. He projected his consciousness across the galaxy, a feat of such immense power and selflessness that it cost him his life. He didn't die of exhaustion. He consciously chose to become one with the Force, his ego so completely erased that he could perform the feat and then release his physical form the moment it was over. It was the final step in his journey from a boy clinging to his legacy to a true Jedi Master who had learned to let go of everything, even his own life, to save his friends. So, the Force Ghost is not a reward. It is the culmination of a spiritual journey that very, very few are willing or able to undertake. It is the light side's answer to the dark side's empty, clinging immortality. One is a shout of "I am" that is eventually silenced by the universe. The other is a whisper of "I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me," that echoes forever. The Jedi who vanish forever find a well-earned peace, but the ones who return, they are not lingering because they have unfinished business. They remain because their selflessness is so complete that they have become eternal shepherds of the light itself, ensuring that hope, wisdom, and compassion are never truly gone from the galaxy. Let's talk about the most mind-bending, reality-altering concept ever introduced to the Star Wars galaxy. We're moving beyond the Force, beyond life and death, into the very architecture of time and space itself. This is the story of the world between worlds, and it fundamentally changes everything we thought we knew about destiny. You know the feeling of looking at a star chart? You see points of light, connected by lines representing hyperspace lanes. Now imagine if you could step behind that chart, not to travel to those stars, but to a place where those stars, and every moment in their history, are just points on a vast living tapestry. A place where time isn't a river you float down, but an ocean you can swim through in any direction. That is the world between worlds. It's not a physical location. You can't input coordinates into a Navi computer and jump to it. It's a dimension that exists within the Force itself, a layer of reality that is the framework upon which time and space are woven. The first thing anyone describes is the silence. It's not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of potential, of everything and nothing at once. You stand on a seemingly infinite pathway of etched stone and light, suspended in a void filled with distant swirling constellations. But those aren't stars, they are events, moments in time. Each point of light is a conversation, a battle, a birth, a death, and the pathways between them are the threads of cause and effect. The most terrifying and glorious aspect of this realm is that these moments are accessible. They appear as portals, like shimmering windows of light, and if you listen, you can hear the sounds of the events happening within them. You could see the duel on Mustafar. You could witness the signing of the Declaration of a New Republic. You could hear a whispered secret from 1,000 years in the past or future. And the most profound implication, you could interact. This is where the concept of fate gets rewritten. From within the world between worlds, an individual could, in theory, reach out and pull someone out of their timeline, They could save them from a predetermined death. We see this happen. Ezra Bridger, standing in this realm, witnesses the moment of Ahsoka Tano's apparent death at the hands of Darth Vader. He sees her fighting, losing, and just as Vader is about to strike the killing blow, Ezra, from his vantage point outside of time, reaches through the portal and pulls Ahsoka out of that moment and into the world between worlds. He didn't change the past, he altered its outcome from a dimension where the past, present and future are all equally accessible. But that act created one of the most haunting confrontations in all of Star Wars, Ahsoka facing Anakin again, years later, in that same realm. When Ahsoka returned to the world between worlds, this time through the doorway on Peridea, she found herself standing in that strange starless expanse once more. But she wasn't alone. She turned, and there was Anakin Skywalker. Yet there was something off about him. He smiled, but behind that smile was a weight, a question. Their duel was unlike anything else in Star Wars. He was forcing her to confront what she had become. She had spent years defined by loss, by guilt, survivor's guilt, for walking away from the Jedi, for believing she'd failed her master, her friends, her order. Anakin forced her to relive those moments. The siege of Mandalore, the pain, the betrayal. And in doing so, to face the truth. She had never truly let go of the past. He told her she had one last lesson to learn. Live or die. And when she refused to strike him down, when she chose mercy over fear, compassion over hate, he smiled again. The light returned to his eyes, and he said, "There's hope for you yet." In that moment, Ahsoka transcended. She didn't change Anakin's fate. She understood it. She saw that even in his fall, his story wasn't destruction, but redemption. Her fight was against the shadow he left behind, the shadow she had carried within herself, and by releasing that burden, she stepped into the light. When she awoke on Peridea, reborn in white, she was no longer a warrior haunted by the Clone Wars. She was a guide, a being of balance, like Gandalf the White for the Star Wars mythos. But this encounter, this vision between life and death, it was real. The world between worlds is not a dreamscape. It's the bridge between the living force, the energy that flows through all living things, and the cosmic force, the eternal consciousness that gives the universe its order. When Anakin died on the Death Star and became one with the Force, he transcended the boundaries of time and space. That's what it means to be a luminous being. His appearance to Ahsoka wasn't a vision or hallucination. It was his true, redeemed self. Anakin Skywalker, now part of the cosmic force, manifesting through the veil. The Force doesn't summon such encounters by chance. It called her there because her destiny was unfinished. She wasn't meant to die on Peridea, not yet. She still had to learn the final lesson her master once failed to complete: how to live beyond war. The duel was the Force's way of teaching that. Both Jedi and man, both darkness and light, fully reconciled. The Force had chosen to bring her back, purified and renewed. Above her, Mirai, the owl-like being that had watched over her for years, circled the sky. The living avatar of the daughter from Mortis, who once sacrificed herself to save Ahsoka's life. Her presence confirmed the truth. This wasn't coincidence. From Mortis to Malachor to Peridea, every step of Ahsoka's journey had been guided by the same unseen hand, the will of the Force itself. That is the power of the world between worlds. It doesn't let you change history, but it lets you understand it. It reveals that destiny isn't a single thread, but an entire web. The realm doesn't exist to rewrite fate. It exists to show its full shape. But before we get carried away with the idea of fixing every tragedy, the universe imposes strict, non-negotiable rules. This is a cosmic control room with fail-safes. The danger of paradox. The realm itself seems to resist catastrophic paradoxes. If you were to save someone whose death was a fundamental catalyst for the future, the consequences could be universe-ending. Pulling Padme out of her childbirth scene, for instance, could unravel the very reality that allowed you to act. The Force maintains balance here. It allows for small corrections, not wholesale rewrites of history. It's a two-way street. The portals don't just lead out, they can let things in. When Emperor Palpatine became aware of the world between worlds, he wanted to control it. He understood that whoever mastered this realm, they would rule all of history. He could ensure the Sith never fell, that the Jedi never rose. He could become a literal god of time. But when he tried to reach through and pull Ezra to him, he demonstrated the danger. If a dark side entity of that power could get a foothold in the world between worlds, they could reach into any moment in time and inject their influence, corrupting history at its source. The gatekeepers and the keys. This power isn't just lying around. Access is fiercely guarded. It's deeply tied to the ancient Jedi on the planet Lothal, who built a gateway to it, understanding its danger. The Mortis gods, the father, son and daughter, are also intrinsically connected to it. They represent the living force in a way that transcends time, and their story is literally woven into the tapestry of the realm. Furthermore, the realm seems to only open to those who are meant to be there, often at a moment of cosmic balance or necessity, not to those who seek it for power. This brings us to the most philosophical question it raises. What is fate in a universe with a world between worlds? It suggests that fate is not a pre-written script, but a living, breathing pattern. Our choices are real and have weight, creating new threads in the tapestry. But some events are like anchor points, foundational moments that hold the entire structure together. The realm allows for intervention, but it also seems to self-correct. When Ezra saved Ahsoka, he created a new thread. In that new thread, Ahsoka lived, but the original event still held its power. It still happened, and its consequences, Vader's confirmation of her death, his deepened fall, still rippled forward. Ahsoka was returned to her own time at a point after her death, allowing the timeline to continue with a hidden saved thread. So, the world between worlds doesn't destroy the concept of destiny. It complexifies it. It proposes a model of fate not as a single road, but as a vast, interconnected network of roots. You can prune a small root and the tree will live, even grow in a slightly different direction. But if you cut the taproot, the whole tree dies. In the end, Ezra Bridger, understanding this cosmic responsibility, makes the only choice that preserves reality. He destroys the Lothal gateway from the inside, trapping himself and closing the door to this power, preventing Palpatine or anyone else from ever tyrannizing time itself. The legacy of the world between worlds is that it elevates Star Wars from a story about a fight for the galaxy to a fight for the integrity of history itself. It reveals that the Force is not just an energy field that gives Jedi their power. It is the fundamental substance of reality. It is the ultimate expression of the idea that all is connected. Every choice we make echoes in the Force, and in this one, secret, sacred place, those echoes can sometimes, if the balance is right, be answered. Talking about the High Republic is like digging into the ancient, shiny history of the Jedi before everything went sideways. It's all clean robes, functional democracy, and this overwhelming feeling that maybe they've got it all figured out. Spoiler alert, they absolutely did not. But that's what makes it so fascinating. Alright, so picture this. It's a few hundred years before a kid named Anakin Skywalker stares up at a twin sun sunset. The Sith, they're a ghost story, a spooky myth that Jedi Masters tell their Padawans to scare them into meditating properly. Meditate, young one, or the ancient Sith Lords will get you, and the Padawan just rolls their eyes. The Sith have been gone for 1,000 years. It's like being scared of a Viking raid in today's world. This is the Golden Age, the High Republic. And the Jedi of this era? They are the rock stars of the galaxy. They're not holed up in that temple on Coruscant, acting as glorified police negotiators. They're out there. They're explorers, peacekeepers, diplomats. Their headquarters isn't even on Coruscant at the start. It's on this beautiful planet called Jeddah, a world sacred to the Force, where all kinds of Force-related beliefs mix and mingle. It's like the spiritual mecca of the galaxy. The Republic is expanding at a rate that would make your head spin. New hyperspace lanes are being blasted open every other week. It's a time of incredible optimism. And the Jedi are the vanguard of all this. They fly these gorgeous white ships, they wear pristine robes, and they carry these brilliant white lightsabers. Everything is clean and new and full of light. It's like the galaxy just got a fresh coat of paint. But the thing about building something beautiful, it attracts termites, and the termites in this case are called the Nihil. Imagine a pirate gang, but don't think of a single ship with a Jolly Roger. Think of a chaotic, decentralized swarm of marauders. They're like space Vikings mixed with a biker gang, and they have one insane, game-changing advantage: pathfinding. See, Traveling through hyperspace is normally like driving on a super strict government-regulated highway. You stick to the known lanes, you follow the beacons, or you end up as a smudge on an asteroid. It's safe, it's predictable, and it's slow. The Nihil? They're the guys who cut across the median, drive through people's backyards, and make their own exits. They have these special navigators called pathfinders, who can calculate insane, unpredictable jumps through hyperspace. They can appear out of nowhere, hit a convoy, and vanish before a Jedi can even say, "I have a bad feeling about this." They're not fighting for some grand Sith ideology. They're not trying to rule the galaxy. They're in it for chaos, for plunder, for the sheer thrill of tearing down something beautiful. And for a republic that's used to playing by the rules, this is a complete nightmare. It's like trying to fight a mosquito with a broadsword. You're big and powerful, but the mosquito is unpredictable, annoying, and it's draining you drop by drop. This is the first major crack in the golden facade. The Jedi are built for a certain kind of fight. They're knights in shining armor. But the Nihil are guerrilla fighters. They don't stand and trade lightsaber blows. They hit and run. They use fear. They're the first real test of the Jedi's peacetime philosophy in a very, very long time. And you see the Jedi struggling to adapt. You have these incredible Jedi Masters, like Avar Kriss. She's basically the ideal Jedi. She's so connected to the Force that she perceives it as this grand galactic symphony, with every living thing adding its own note. She's powerful, she's compassionate, she's everything the Order says a Jedi should be. And then you have someone like Elzar Mann. Now, Elzar is my guy. He's a fantastic Jedi, brilliant, but he's different. He thinks in ways that sometimes make the Council a little nervous. He's creative, he's emotional, he follows his gut. He's the kind of guy who might bend the rules if it means saving people. He feels the Force not as a symphony, but as a vast, wild ocean. And you can't conduct an ocean. You have to ride its waves. That tension between Avar's structured symphony and Elzar's wild ocean is the central conflict within the Jedi Order itself during this golden age. They're so used to the symphony, to everything being in its place, that the chaotic ocean of the Nihil threat and the chaotic ocean inside one of their own throws them for a loop. And then there's the Starlight Beacon. Oh man, the Starlight Beacon. If you want one single symbol of the High Republic's ambition and its eventual hubris, this is it. It's a space station, but calling it a space station is like calling the Empire State Building a nice shed. It's a massive, beautiful, city-sized beacon of light and hope, parked out in the Outer Rim. It's a symbol. It's a place for diplomacy, a safe port for travelers, a base for Jedi. It's the Republic physically planting its flag in the frontier and saying, "We are here." The light is here. It's a gorgeous idea. It's also a giant blinking target. The Nihil, of course, eventually set their sights on it, and the attack on the Starlight Beacon, it's the moment the illusion of perfect safety shatters. It's the day the Golden Age gets a black eye, and this is where we see the Jedi philosophy really start to show its limits. They're so committed to being guardians, to being a light in the darkness, that they never truly considered an enemy whose only goal was to smash the light bulb. They prepared for disputes, for negotiations, for small-scale conflicts. They did not prepare for total senseless war against an enemy that laughs at their rules. You see Jedi Knights who have spent their entire lives in peace suddenly having to make impossible choices. Do they save the diplomats, or do they save the children? Do they follow the Council's plan, or do they trust their own raw, untrained instincts in the heat of a crisis? Some of them, like Elzar Mann, start to reach for the dark side. In a moment of panic and anger, with friends dying around him, Elzar uses the Force in a way that is aggressive. It's violent. It's not the calm, defensive style he was taught. And it works. It saves lives in that immediate moment. But the cost, the guilt, the shock of what he did, it almost breaks him. And that's the real tragedy of the High Republic Jedi. They were so good, so pure, that they had no immunity to the darkness. They had no antibodies for that kind of virus. When the Nihil and the chaos they represented finally hit them, some of the best of them got spiritually sick. This era also introduces us to the Drengir. Think of them as sentient, carnivorous plants from your worst nightmare. They're a hive mind of pure primal hunger. They're a force of nature, a biological darkness, and fighting them is completely different from fighting the Nihil. It's like trying to negotiate with a hurricane. The Jedi have to contend with both of these threats at once. the chaotic, intelligent evil of the Nihil, and the mindless, consuming evil of the Drengir. It's a 1-2 punch that shows the galaxy isn't just sunshine and rainbows, even with the Sith gone. And speaking of the Sith being gone, here's the million-credit question, the one that hangs over this entire golden age like a shadow. Were they really gone? We, the audience, we know the answer. We know Darth Bane's rule of 2 is ticking away in the background like a time bomb, a master and an apprentice, one to hold the power, one to crave it, hiding, manipulating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Jedi of the High Republic are so sure the Sith are extinct that they literally dismiss any evidence to the contrary as nonsense. They're the ultimate victors who wrote the history books, and they're so convinced of their own victory that they've become blind. There are hints, little whispers in the dark, unexplained disturbances in the Force, strange coordinated moves in the criminal underworld that seem too clever, too patient to be the work of ordinary gangsters. The Nihil themselves, with their impossible pathfinding tech, where did they get it? Was it really their own invention? Or were they guided, manipulated by a hidden hand, a hand that wanted to test the Jedi, to weaken them, to see how this mighty Republic would handle a little bit of chaos? It's a terrifying thought, that the whole time the Jedi were building their beautiful beacon of light, their ultimate enemy wasn't gone. They were in the next room, listening through the wall, taking notes, and slowly, patiently, sharpening a knife. The fall of the Starlight Beacon isn't the end of the High Republic era, but it's the beginning of the end. The Golden Age is tarnished. The galaxy has seen that the Jedi can be hurt, that their great symbols can fall. The absolute, unshakable faith that the Republic and the Jedi Order had in themselves, it's fractured. And a crack, no matter how small, is all a Sith Lord needs. Now we need to pull the camera way, way back, because to really understand why everything fell apart, you can't just look at the Jedi, you have to look at the house they lived in. And man, what a house it was. The Galactic Republic, for over 1,000 generations, it was the government, it was a democracy, a real, honest-to-goodness republic, where planets sent their representatives to the capital on Coruscant to argue, debate, and hopefully make things work. And for a long, long time, it did work. It's easy to watch the prequels and think, wow, this thing was a mess from the start, but it wasn't. It lasted for 25,000 years. Let that number sink in. Human recorded history on Earth is what, 5,000 years? This thing lasted 5 times longer than that. It was an unimaginable success story, but that's also its tragedy. Because nothing that big and that old fails because of one bad day. It fails because the foundation slowly rots away over centuries. It's like a giant ancient tree that looks mighty from the outside, but on the inside, it's completely hollow, just waiting for one strong wind to push it over. So, what was the foundation, and how did it rot? Let's start with the core idea, representation. The Republic was built on the principle that every member world had a say. Sounds great, right? In the beginning, when it was a few hundred worlds around the core, it probably was. It was manageable. It was like a small town council. You knew your senator, they knew you, things got done. But then, it worked too well. It became a victim of its own success. More and more worlds wanted in. Who wouldn't? You get the protection of the Republic Navy, access to galactic trade routes, a say in galactic law. So, the Republic expanded, and expanded, and expanded. Until you had, what was it, over 1 million member systems? Maybe tens of millions of planets and colonies? Think about that for a second. 1 million. How in the world do you run a democracy with 1 million members? You can't. It's impossible. It's like trying to run a company where every single employee is a CEO with their own agenda. The system completely buckled under its own weight. The Senate on Coruscant became this gigantic, noisy, chaotic circus. 1,000 voices all shouting at once. Getting anything done required so much debate, so much compromise, so much backroom dealing, that the simplest decision could take years. It was political paralysis, bureaucratic quicksand, and this is where the first big rot set in, greed and complacency. See, when a system gets that big and that slow, it doesn't reward the idealists. It rewards the lobbyists. It rewards the corporations who can afford to wine and dine senators, to encourage them to see things their way. The Galactic Republic didn't have campaign finance laws. It was a free-for-all. And the biggest players? the Trade Federation, the Commerce Guild, the Corporate Alliance. They were mega conglomerates with their own private armies of battle droids. They had more wealth, and in some cases more military power, than entire star systems. And they used that wealth to buy influence in the Senate. It was legalized corruption. It wasn't even a secret. Everyone knew it was happening. It was just how the game was played. So you have these senators who are supposed to be representing their people, but they're really representing the corporate interests that line their pockets. Their loyalty wasn't to the Republic or even to their own planet. It was to the credit, and the people at the top, the core world elites, they became complacent. They lived in their shiny skyscrapers on Coruscant, so far removed from the problems on the Outer Rim that those problems might as well not have existed. If you're a senator from a rich core world, are you really going to care about some dust ball like Tatooine, where they can't even afford to wipe their own brows? Probably not. You're worried about your corporate tax breaks and your trade route subsidies. This created a massive, festering resentment in the Outer Rim. These planets were technically part of the Republic, but they got none of the benefits. They were exploited for their resources, ignored by the government, and left to be preyed on by pirates and slavers like the Hutts. The Republic promised them protection and prosperity, but it delivered nothing. So the Outer Rim started to feel like colonies of an empire, not equal partners in a republic. The foundation wasn't just cracked, whole chunks of it were missing. And the Jedi? Where were they in all this? They were right in the middle of it, and that was part of the problem. The Jedi had become so intertwined with the Republic that they were basically its spiritual branch. Their temple was on the Republic's capital world. They answered to the Senate. They were peacekeepers, but their idea of keeping the peace often meant maintaining the status quo. The stable, comfortable, corrupt status quo that benefited the core worlds. They'd become glorified bureaucrats in robes. Instead of being out in the galaxy, feeling the living force and helping people, they were stuck on Coruscant, mediating trade disputes and acting as bodyguards for politicians. They were so busy putting out small political fires that they became completely blind to the fact that the whole forest was about to be set ablaze. They couldn't see the suffering in the Outer Rim because they never went there unless the Senate sent them. Their connection to the common being, to the very people they were sworn to protect, had been severed. They were living in a bubble, and that bubble was floating high above the clouds of Coruscant. This is the perfect breeding ground for a monster. And the monster, when he came, didn't arrive with a red lightsaber and a declaration of war. He arrived in a nice suit, with a kind smile and a promise to fix the bureaucracy. Sheev Palpatine didn't break the Republic. He found it broken, saw the cracks everyone else was ignoring, and gently tapped it with a hammer. He was less of a conqueror and more of a master mechanic who knew exactly which rusty bolt to loosen to make the whole machine fall apart. He exploited every single one of these flaws. He used the corporate greed, pitting the Trade Federation against the Senate. He used the political paralysis, positioning himself as the only one who could get things done. And most brilliantly, he used the resentment of the Outer Rim, fanning those flames into a full-blown secessionist movement, the Confederacy of Independent Systems, the Separatists. Think about that. The Separatists weren't mustache-twirling villains, well, their leaders were, but the millions of citizens and planets that joined them. They were people who were genuinely fed up with a corrupt, distant government that didn't care about them. Count Dooku, a former Jedi, was their public face, and he wasn't entirely wrong when he called the Republic a corrupt husk. He was just a hypocrite, because he and his Sith master were the ones making it that way, on purpose. So, Palpatine engineers a crisis, the Clone Wars, that the Republic is completely unable to handle with its slow bureaucratic systems. And what's the solution he offers? Give me more power, temporary emergency powers, of course, to deal with this crisis. And the Senate, so terrified and so incompetent, cheers as he takes the throne. They give away their freedom for the illusion of safety. It's a story as old as time. The crazy thing is, the Foundation was so weak that he barely had to push. The Republic was a patient that was already on life support. Palpatine just walked in and pulled the plug, all while telling everyone he was the doctor saving its life. The real tragedy is that the Republic wasn't destroyed by the Sith. It was destroyed by its own success, its own greed, and its own inability to adapt. It became a monument to its own past greatness, a beautiful, empty shell. The Jedi were the guardians of that shell, and when the shell finally crumbled, they were buried in the rubble. It makes you think, doesn't it? The biggest threats aren't always the alien invasions or the super weapons. Sometimes it's just paperwork and greed, and the slow, quiet sound of people forgetting why they built something in the first place. The Jedi Code. It sounds so noble, right? It's this ancient, sacred set of rules that's supposed to guide a Jedi toward peace and enlightenment. For 1,000 generations, it was the blueprint for how to be a good person with superpowers. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The code, and the way the Jedi interpreted it by the end, contained the seeds of their own destruction. It was a recipe for disaster, and they were following it like master chefs. You know the one, right? There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. It sounds amazing, poetic, profound, but if you look at it with a critical eye, it's not a guide for living. It's a list of denials. It's a philosophy of suppression. There is no emotion. Come on, really. You're going to tell a living, breathing being, brimming with the Force, that they're supposed to have no emotion? That's not enlightenment. That's a psychological straitjacket. Emotions aren't a bug in the human or alien operating system. They're a feature. They're what drive us, what connect us. Love, compassion, empathy, even righteous anger at injustice. These are the things that make us care. The Jedi Code treated them like a dangerous virus. So what happens when you tell people, especially kids, to repress their feelings? Those feelings don't just vanish, they fester. They go underground into the shadows and they mutate. A little fear, left unacknowledged, grows into panic. A bit of anger, shoved down again and again, curdles into hatred. A forbidden attachment becomes an obsessive, secretive obsession. The code wasn't a path to peace, it was a pressure cooker. And we all know what happens when a pressure cooker doesn't have a release valve. This leads us to the single biggest, most controversial rule, the rule against attachment. Now let's be clear, the Jedi weren't against love. They preached compassion for all life. But compassion is a safe, distant, universal concept. Attachment is personal. It's specific. It's the love for your mother, your brother, your best friend, your spouse. The Jedi forbade it because they feared that kind of love would lead to fear of loss, and fear leads to the dark side. And you know what? They weren't entirely wrong. Look at Anakin. His fear of losing Padme is what Palpatine used to corrupt him. Case closed, right? But wait, let's flip that around. Why was Anakin's love for Padme so desperate, so possessive, so terrified? It's because it was forbidden. It was a secret he had to hide from the only family he'd ever known. He had no one to talk to about his fears, no mentor to guide him through these totally normal human emotions. He couldn't go to Yoda and say, "Master, I'm having nightmares about the woman I love dying." He had to bury it, letting it poison him from the inside. If attachment had been acknowledged, understood and taught how to be managed in a healthy way, rather than outright banned, could Anakin have learned to love Padme without that suffocating fear? Could he have learned that loving someone means accepting that you might lose them and that's a painful part of life? We'll never know because the code gave him no tools for that. It just said no. This obsession with emotional control made the Jedi kind of terrible at their jobs when it came to real people. They became detached, aloof. They'd show up on a planet torn apart by war, where people are feeling grief, rage and despair. And the Jedi would be these calm, serene, emotionless monks, telling everyone to find peace. It's no wonder the common folk in the Outer Rim saw them as out-of-touch bureaucrats. They were. They'd lost their empathy. And this leads to the second major flaw, their interpretation of the Force itself. The Jedi of the prequel era were almost exclusively focused on the unifying Force. This is the big picture view. It's about destiny, prophecy, the cosmic balance, the grand flow of time and space. It's why they were so obsessed with the Chosen One prophecy. They were looking at the galaxy through a telescope. But they completely neglected the living Force. The living Force is the here and now. It's the energy between living things, the moment-to-moment connection. It's the tree in front of you, the nerf you're eating, the feelings of the person you're talking to. It's about being present. The best Jedi, the ones who truly got it, understood both. But the Order had become so rigid, so dogmatic, that they sidelined the living force. It was seen as less academic, less important. This is why Qui-Gon Jinn was such a pain in the neck for the Council. He was a living force guy. He trusted his instincts, his gut feelings in the moment. He followed the will of the Force as he felt it right now. The Council saw him as a maverick, a loose cannon. They were busy staring at their cosmic maps, and he was the one actually feeling the road beneath his feet. This blindness is why they completely missed the Sith Lord sitting in the same room as them. They were looking for a grand, dark disturbance in the unifying force, some huge cosmic event. They weren't paying attention to the subtle, slimy, living darkness oozing out of Senator Palpatine. They weren't listening to the living force screaming that something was wrong in that very office. Their doctrine made them arrogant. They believed their way was the only way. They couldn't conceive that the Sith could have evolved, could be hiding right under their noses, using a different philosophy. They were so sure of their own righteousness that they became blind. Think about how they handled Anakin. They sensed this kid is off the charts powerful, a vergence in the Force, but they also sense his fear, his anger, his attachments. Instead of seeing a traumatized little boy who needed gentle guidance and help processing his emotions, they saw a danger, a problem. Obi-Wan, to his credit, saw a brother. But the Council? They saw a prophecy to be managed and a risk to be controlled. They took this emotionally scarred child, put him in a system that demanded he suppress everything he was feeling, gave him no healthy outlets, and then acted surprised when he developed severe emotional problems. It's like taking a fish, telling it it's wrong for being wet, and then throwing it into a desert. The result is predictable. The Code created a system that was brilliant at producing disciplined, powerful knights, but it was a catastrophic failure at producing emotionally whole, resilient people. It built fantastic soldiers, but terrible therapists for themselves. And in the end, that's what Palpatine exploited. He offered him validation. He was the only one who acknowledged Anakin's feelings. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to want to save the one you love. The Jedi are wrong for denying you this. He offered the release valve the Jedi had welded shut. The Jedi Order didn't only fall because of Palpatine's plan. It fell because it had built a wall between itself and the very humanity it was supposed to protect. Their doctrine left them unable to understand the people they served, and worse, unable to understand the darkness growing within their own ranks. They were so busy trying to have no emotion that they became strangers to the very thing that made them alive. And in that emptiness, the dark side found its way in. It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? In their quest to eliminate all darkness, they became blind to the light and shadows within themselves. And that blindness was the very thing that allowed the darkness to win. Heavy stuff. But it all ties into this next part, which is maybe the most misunderstood concept in the whole saga. The Chosen One prophecy. What did balance actually mean? Because I'll tell you right now, it didn't mean what the Jedi thought it did. The Chosen One. It sounds so epic, right? A being born of no father, conceived by the Force itself, who would one day come and bring balance to the Force. The Jedi waited for this guy for centuries. They treated it like a galactic messiah story. And when Qui-Gon Jinn stumbles upon this traumatized slave boy on Tatooine, who has off-the-charts midi-chlorians, he thinks, bingo. We've won the lottery, this is him. But here's the thing about prophecies. They're sneaky, they're never literal, they're a puzzle box, and if you're not careful, you'll solve it wrong and spring the trap. The Jedi, I'm sorry to say, solved it wrong. They heard bring balance to the Force, and they thought it meant what? That this Chosen One would come along and wipe out the Sith, that he would be the ultimate weapon for the light. He'd march into the Sith temple, kick the door down, and vanquish the darkness so the light could reign supreme forever. But think about that for a second. Is that balance? Let's use a metaphor. Think of the Force as a set of scales. On one side you have the light, on the other the dark. For 1,000 years the light side has been massively, overwhelmingly dominant. The Jedi Order is at its peak with 10,000 knights. The Sith? Just two guys hiding in a basement. The scale is slammed all the way down on the light side. It's not balanced at all. It's an imbalance in favor of the light. So, if someone is prophesied to bring balance to these scales, what has to happen? The heavy side has to get lighter, and the light side has to get heavier. The Chosen One wasn't prophesied to be the Jedi's ultimate champion. He was prophesied to be the balance itself. And balance, by its very nature, requires a correction, a reduction of the light and a restoration of the dark. That is a terrifying, horrifying thought if you're a Jedi. It means the prophecy they saw as their ultimate victory was actually a prediction of their own downfall. And that's exactly what Anakin Skywalker did. Look at his life's work. He didn't bring balance by becoming the perfect Jedi and destroying the Sith. He brought balance by destroying the Jedi Order. He marched into the Jedi Temple and slaughtered almost everyone inside. He hunted down the survivors. Within a couple of decades, the Jedi were virtually extinct, and on the other side, the Sith. Well, there were still two, but the scales, they were a lot closer to even now, weren't they? A handful of Jedi in hiding, and 2 Sith ruling the galaxy. That's a lot more balanced than 10,000 Jedi and 2 Sith. He literally balanced the scales by tearing down the dominant side. Now, I know what you're thinking. But wait, he also threw the Emperor down a shaft. That was the balance. And you're right, that was the final, ultimate act. But let's reframe that. By the time of Return of the Jedi, the scales were imbalanced again. But this time, in favour of the dark. The Empire ruled, the Sith were in charge, the Jedi were gone. So, for the scales to find a true, neutral balance, the dominant dark side had to be taken down a peg too. Anakin's final act destroyed the last 2 Sith Lords, leaving no dominant side at all. Just the pure, neutral force, with the potential for new traditions to rise, unburdened by the dogmas of the past. That is the true balance. Not the victory of one side, but the end of the extreme dominance of either. This is why the Jedi should have been terrified of the prophecy, not excited by it. Because in story after story, in myth after myth, prophecies always unfold in a way that subverts expectations and punishes the arrogance of those who think they understand them. Oedipus was prophesied to kill his father and marry his mother. His parents tried to avoid it by abandoning him, and their very actions set the events in motion that led to the prophecy being fulfilled. It was the attempt to avoid it that made it happen. The Jedi are the same. Their entire handling of Anakin was an attempt to control the prophecy, to mold him into their weapon. Their fear, their suspicion, their rigid rules, it all pushed him toward the very darkness they were trying to avoid. In trying to ensure the prophecy served them, they guaranteed it would destroy them. And this brings us to the real philosophical meaning of balance in the Force. The Jedi of the prequel era saw the dark side as a cancer, a corruption, something to be removed and destroyed. But what if that's wrong? Think about nature. You can't have day without night. You can't have life without death. You can't have creation without destruction. These aren't moral opposites. They are complementary halves of a whole. The dark side isn't just mustache-twirling evil. It's emotion, passion, instinct, change, and even death itself. The light side is peace, knowledge, serenity, order, and life. Okay, deep breath after all that heavy prophecy stuff, because now we get to the good part. The Jedi who looked at the rulebook scratched their heads and said, yeah, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. These weren't fallen Jedi. Not at first. They were the free thinkers, the intuitives, the ones who asked uncomfortable questions in council meetings. They were the canaries in the coal mine, chirping a warning that everyone else dismissed as noise. And their stories are, in many ways, the true tragedy of the Jedi's fall. Let's start with the man, Qui-Gon Jinn. If the Jedi Order were a major corporation, Qui-Gon would be that brilliant, slightly scruffy engineer who works in the basement, bypassing corporate protocol, because he's actually trying to get the product to work. He was a Jedi Master in title, but he was a constant thorn in the Council's side. Why? Because he trusted the living Force more than he trusted them. Remember that metaphor from before? The Council was staring at the cosmic map of the unifying Force, while Qui-Gon was feeling the potholes in the road with his own 2 feet. He believed the Force revealed its will in the present moment, through intuition and gut feeling. If the Council said, go left, but Qui-Gon's instincts screamed go right, he was going right, every single time. This is why he fought so hard for Anakin. The Council saw a risky, emotionally compromised child. Qui-Gon, listening to the living Force swirling around that boy, saw something else entirely. He saw the chosen one. He wasn't blinded by dogma. He was listening to the music of the moment, and he knew that the rigid, by-the-book Obi-Wan wasn't the right teacher for him. Qui-Gon knew this boy needed a guide who understood nuance, who wasn't afraid of emotion. He knew he had to be that guide himself. His death at the hands of Darth Maul is the single biggest what-if in the entire saga. If Qui-Gon had lived, everything changes. He would have raised Anakin as a father, not a brother. He would have validated the boy's feelings, taught him how to manage his fears and attachments, not just suppress them. He would have shown him that the Force was about feeling, not just following rules. Palpatine's claws would never have found purchase. The entire galaxy pivots on that one lightsaber wound. And the tragedy is, the Council never really understood what they lost. They lost their one true rebel, the one who could have saved them all. Now, let's talk about his own master, the man who walked away, Count Dooku. Before he was a Sith Lord, before he was the leader of the Separatists, Dooku was one of the most respected Jedi of his generation. He was Qui-Gon's master. He was legendary, a perfect Jedi by the old standards. So what happened? He saw the truth. Dooku was an idealist. He believed in the Republic and the Jedi Order as forces of justice. But as he served, he saw the rot we talked about earlier. He saw the corruption in the Senate, the backroom deals, the way the Republic was failing its citizens. And he saw the Jedi Council becoming increasingly political, complacent, and blind to it all. He started speaking up. He argued for change, and he was shut down over and over. The Council's attitude was essentially, that's not our problem. We keep the peace, we don't get involved in politics. But to Dooku, allowing a corrupt system to continue was a political act. It was choosing the side of the oppressor. He became disillusioned. He saw the Jedi as part of the problem. So he left. He walked away from the Order, a move so rare it was almost unheard of. And this is where Palpatine, the ultimate predator, swooped in. He found Dooku at his most vulnerable, a man who still wanted to fix the galaxy, but had lost all faith in the institution that was supposed to do it. Palpatine offered him a different path, a noble cause. The Confederacy of Independent Systems wasn't just a droid army, it was, on paper, a movement to break free from a corrupt republic. Dooku genuinely believed, at least at first, that he was creating something better. Of course, it was a lie. He was just Palpatine's other apprentice, a placeholder for Anakin. He traded one rigid system for another, far more evil one. He saw the Jedi Order he loved betray its own ideals, and in his anger, he walked right into a trap. He's a tragic figure, a revolutionary who became the very thing he swore to destroy. Then there's the weirdest, most mysterious story of them all. Zeffo was a Jedi Master, a contemporary of Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn, and one of the strangest, most misunderstood figures in Jedi history. He wasn't a warrior or a politician, he was a seer. His gift, or maybe his curse, was foresight, powerful visions of the future. And again, those visions showed him the same thing, a great conflict coming, a war that would engulf the entire galaxy. He warned the Jedi Council, "We need to be ready. We need an army to defend the Republic because war is coming." But the Council dismissed him. The galaxy was in its golden age. The High Republic had given way to an era of peace and diplomacy. The Jedi had become philosophers and peacekeepers, not soldiers. The idea of creating an army felt like blasphemy to everything they believed in. They thought his visions were fear-based, born from anxiety, not prophecy, so they quietly removed him from the Council, politely but firmly isolating him from positions of influence. But Zeffo couldn't let it go. The visions haunted him. He saw cities burning, worlds falling, the Jedi dying in droves, and somewhere deep inside, he knew it wasn't a metaphor, it was a warning. So he did what few Jedi ever dared. He broke the rules for the greater good. Acting in secret, using his credentials as a Jedi Master, Zeffo reached out to the Kaminoans, a distant reclusive species known for their cloning expertise. He commissioned the creation of a grand army for the Republic, an army that could defend peace when diplomacy failed. The Kaminoans, ever professional, accepted his order. They didn't question the ethics. They saw a client, a purpose, and a challenge. It was a bold move, and a doomed one, because someone else was watching. Count Dooku, his old friend and fellow Jedi, had already begun walking the shadowed path toward the dark side. Under the secret guidance of Darth Sidious, Chancellor Palpatine, Dooku learned of Zeffo secret project. Sidious saw in it the perfect opportunity to begin the greatest deception in galactic history. At Sidious's command, Dooku arranged Zeffo death. The official records said his ship crashed on Felucia during a diplomatic mission. a convenient lie that buried his name in the archives. In truth, Dooku had him ambushed and executed. Zeffo died believing he'd done the right thing, never knowing his work had already been stolen. Using Zeffo identity, Dooku went to Kamino and took over the project. The Kaminoans were told the Jedi Council had approved additional security protocols. In reality, Dooku, now operating under his Sith name, Darth Tyrannus, commissioned the creation of inhibitor chips within each clone's brain. They were designed to be harmless until a single command code would activate them. That command would one day be called Order 66. Zeffo had built a shield to protect the Republic, and the Sith turned it into the blade that destroyed the Jedi. Years later, when the Clone Wars were already tearing the galaxy apart, Yoda and Obi-Wan began to investigate the mystery of who had truly commissioned the clones. Their search led them to an old Pike crime lord on Obadiah, one who had once been hired to eliminate Zeffo. The Pikes revealed the grim truth. Dooku had ordered the killing personally and erased all records of Zeffo from the Jedi archives. The revelation came too late. The army had already fought beside the Jedi for years. The trap had long since been sprung. Zeffo story is one of the purest tragedies in all of Star Wars. He wasn't power-hungry, he wasn't arrogant, he was trying to save the Republic. He saw the fire coming and built the fire department, only for an arsonist to hijack the trucks and burn down the city. The Council never honoured him. Most Jedi by the time of the Clone Wars didn't even remember his name. But his actions shaped everything that came after. The rise of Palpatine, the fall of the Order, and the birth of the Empire. And if you think about it, the whole tragedy of the Jedi can be seen through him. Qui-Gon represented the need for emotional connection to the living Force. The Council dismissed him as a maverick. Dooku represented the need for moral and political reform. The Council dismissed him as a radical. Zeffo represented the need for practical preparedness, for facing the reality of the galaxy, not the ideal. The Council dismissed him as a fearmonger. In each case, the Order silenced the voice that could have saved them. The Jedi didn't fall because they lacked warning. They fell because they refused to listen. These men were all trying to protect something sacred. They weren't perfect. Qui-Gon could be reckless. Dooku was prideful. Zeffo acted outside the law. But they were visionaries, and the tragedy of visionaries is that they often see what's coming, but no one believes them until it's too late. By the time the truth came out, the Clone Wars were over, the Jedi were gone, and the Republic was no more. Zeffo had seen it all coming, and in trying to prevent the storm, he built the very machine that powered it. It makes you wonder, if the Council had just listened, if they'd taken that one voice seriously, how many lives, how many worlds might have been spared?